Alright, hello people of Defend the House and welcome back to episode 2 of the Big Roundup podcast. Before we get into the games of February, I just want to give a quick little shout out to another podcast we do. One thing I want to say is the people who watch these podcasts is maybe our lowest viewed series. And I think it has maybe the most positive comments out of any videos we do. So to all you guys out there that enjoy this and leave those nice comments, thank you. Because our comment section is, moving on. Yeah, we do another podcast with our friend Ben. It's a bit less formal, it's a bit of a mess, very free-flowing conversation. More about stuff that we play outside of the big AAA, like multiplayer, battle royale, lifestyle games, and indie stuff. And news. You know, a generic fucking gaming podcast. But if you like this stuff, there was more of that available on...
wherever you're listening to your podcast.
Yes.
Pretty much.
Because by the time this has gone up, you will have spread our podcast into all the crevices of the internet.
Yeah, sorry about that.
But anyway.
It doesn't wash out.
February 2019. Let's go chronological.
Yeah.
Starting with Devil May Cry 5. And I remember at the end of the first podcast, I said that I wasn't even interested in paying full price for Devil May Cry because I was really not that interested in Devil May Cry. I have played the franchise very casually. I used to play 1, 2, and 3 with my friend on the PlayStation. I don't think I touched 4. And we messed around and played the remake by Ninja Theory last year, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the Ninja Theory game. But I'm not a big beat-em-up guy. I don't really like the genre.
What is it called? Stylish hard action or something?
I have no idea.
I don't know what the genre is called.
I don't even know, except for Devil May Cry and Bayonetta, I don't even know of other beat-em-up franchises. But
God of War originally was totally one of these.
Yeah, and I didn't really play the original God of Wars. I played 3 because it was really cinematic and visually amazing for the time. But I think I tried to go back to 1 and 2 and I didn't really get very far. So not really my thing. I don't like fighting games. I don't really like learning button combinations. I don't know why. It's just something that doesn't really... I don't know. I just don't...
It doesn't stick in my brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason... which we'll get into, I fucking loved Devil May Cry. I think Devil May Cry 5 is one of the coolest games ever made. It rips shit, this game. Holy shit did I love Devil May Cry 5. And I can't really figure out why. I mean, I have a lot of praise to give to the game, a lot of things I think are amazing. But again, even a great game in this genre, I wouldn't really expect to click with me. Because I would argue that the Bayonetta games are amazing games in this genre. And people hail the Bayonettas as probably the king of the genre. A little bit above DMC, I would say. And I played...
I have no idea. I wouldn't... Don't ask me.
People love Bayonetta.
They do, yeah. People love DMC, though, as well.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, I played the original Bayonetta, and I was like, wow, this is crazy, the visuals are cool, but hey, it's not really my genre, so I came away thinking, that was pretty good. But for some reason, DMC5 just really clicked with me. And I think it might be the most balanced and newcomer-friendly game in this genre that I've played.
Really?
Yeah, because I just found it extremely accessible. There is a very large list of combos, and you can just kind of stick around with some of the more basic to remember, the more basic combos and the easier to remember combos, and still feel like you're kicking ass and doing well. I should say that I did play it on easy difficulty.
Well, so did I, because the menu has 2 options, and one says, this is for people who don't play these games, and the other one says, this is for veterans. And I was like, well, I am not a veteran of DMC, so... And it's very easy.
It is very easy, because I'm going through...
I did not die.
No, I don't think I did either.
It's pretty much impossible to die in that game, though, because you get like 17 of those revive tokens, and you can just pay red orbs as well to revive yourself. So
yeah,
it's like,
I didn't even know about that mechanic because I haven't died either yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I only heard about that. And I was like, oh.
I saw it on a
no
stream.
idea.
I saw someone die. But yeah, I mean, there's two components of DMC. There's the combat, which is obviously the heartier version of the game, and there's the story. And I don't really know what's going on in the story, but we can talk about the cutscenes. But before we dive in, I might as well pass it over to you and let you give your general consensus on DMC 5.
My general consensus on DMC 5 is more or less in line with all the other character action games I played, which is like, yeah, it was good. It was okay. It was good. Yeah, it had some good stuff in it. Like
I can't really debate or argue against you because I expected to feel how you felt. And I don't know if I can break down why it clicked so much with me.
I think for me, the two things that were off-putting, one of them is like a very good thing for people who really like the genre, and the other is just sort of, well, so I think like the combat is insanely deep and complicated.
Yes.
And there are 3 different playable characters that you switch around between very often, and they all have a ridiculous amount of depth to them, which I think is very good for the people who want it. Right?
If you want, yeah, I was gonna say, if you want it, you can go really deep. Like, not to sorry to interrupt, but there was like a couple of combos available to purchase that I just completely ignored, even though I could afford them. I remember one being like, press forward, then back, then triangle, and I was like, I'm never buying that one.
I bought that once, and I was like, I'm never going to use this. And
maybe I hit it by accident, I don't know.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
So I think like the character switching is cool, and it's really impressive that they have, you know, 3 different characters with 3 unique combat systems, and all of them are very deep.
Yeah.
But I am not good at remembering how to play these characters. And so I would feel like every time I would be just figuring it out, it would switch to a different character.
Right, yeah.
And I would have and then I would be like, okay, and then I would just start to figure them out, and then it would switch back, and I'd be like, I've forgotten how to play Nero completely.
Yeah.
I'll just hit circle occasionally while I hit triangle. And that carried through the whole way, I would say, which is just a problem because of me, and I'm just not good at learning these. Like, I just don't get a lot out of these combo heavy games and button, you know, combos.
Yeah.
And then when it was over, I was hoping like maybe they would give you the option to just stick as one character all the way through, which would have been great, even though it breaks the story. But it would have been fun to just...
Yeah, the game doesn't take it so seriously, so that I'm surprised it's not at least like a silly option to do.
Yeah, like you can reload all the missions and, you know, carry forward all your upgrades. But I was really hoping that by the end of it, I would be able to play through the whole game as one character, because I mean, Dante is pretty good.
Yeah, my favorite.
When I first got Dante, I was like, oh, like this game is too much for me, because he was just like, you've got 6 weapons and 3 firearms and 4 different stances, and I'm like, no, game, don't do this to me.
It was like a Neo control scheme almost.
Yeah, he gets some weapons pretty quickly though that are very good, and I very much enjoyed using them. And so I would have played through the whole game just as Dante, but they don't let you, which is unfortunate. So that was my biggest problem with the gameplay, is that I would just be like, okay, I'm learning, getting good. Okay, switch characters, and it's just like repeating over and over again. I never felt like I was mastering it, but that's more because of just how my brain works with these games.
Also, I don't know if you noticed about the DMC games, but they are very, very built around playing more than once.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's just kind of how the franchise has always been. There's actually 6 difficulty modes in this game.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. Yeah.
And also, you, I think there might even be one power that I haven't even got yet. Because I've seen people play Nero, and they have this overlay near the Devil Trigger, and it's like a bunch of bullets, and I still don't know what that is.
Oh, that's if you hold down the shoot button. It like.
But I don't have that UI thing. It's on the UI.
Yeah.
I don't think I have that. Like, I've never seen that before.
Maybe you just don't notice it when you're playing. I don't know.
Maybe.
But some of the skills are like 500,000 orbs.
Yeah.
And it's like, I've never gotten more than 70,000 at any point, you know.
Well,
so yeah, no, I know that they're all about replaying, yeah.
I thought it was maybe because at the end of the game you get a new ability for Nero, which I won't ruin. I thought maybe you get a second ability? I don't know. Maybe I am just completely tunnel vision and blind and I just forgot it was there.
Maybe, yeah. But, yeah, so like, I mean, it's mainly just because I just don't really care about this style of combat. And there's just so much going on with it, and it's great that it's so complicated for the people, you know, because it should be, because the DMC audience is hardcore, and they, you know, but for me, I'm like, I'm an idiot, just let me keep it simple, please, which is why something like DMC by Ninja Theory was appealing, is because there's certainly a decent amount going on with the combat in that game, but it was the same character all the way through. You know, you'd be able to learn these different abilities, and I ended up really enjoying the combat in DMC from Ninja Theory, because it was sort of slower, a little bit heavier feeling, which you eventually get with Dante with the right weapons. Yeah. I'd say my biggest problem is just that I sort of waited like 80% of the game for it to get going. Like, I expect these games to be buck wild crazy, and Bayonetta is certainly is. DMC, I would say, from Ninja Theory, gets there pretty quickly and does some pretty amazing stuff with level design and presentation very quickly. And this, I just thought, like, the cutscenes are very compelling, and they do some fun stuff, and the last hour or hour and a half is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
But all the way getting there, I was just sort of waiting for it to go crazy, and it never really does.
It's definitely a step down from Ninja Theory's crazy boss fights.
Yeah, and level design. I think the level design in DMC5 is really boring.
It's a bit. It kind of reminds me of. This is going to be maybe controversial, but it reminds me a little bit of Doom, where it's like, here is a destroyed Earth, and now here's like an alien planet, and it's kind of just those two, yeah.
Yeah, it feels, honestly, the level design feels like a last-gen game, I would say. And in terms of, like, style, sort of looks like, I mean, it's obviously, you know, the game looks great, but, like, it's just ruined, empty city streets, or, like, generic gloopy demon stuff, you know?
Yeah, that's fair.
And that's the entire game. And they do a little bit near the end, right? It's just like, there's that cool boss fight near the end where the sky like shatters, and that's really neat.
Yeah.
And again, this game ended on a very high note for me, for sure. Because like, it started strong, and then I was like, okay, you know, I get it. And I'm waiting till like chapter 19, and then 19 or 20 are like, okay, this game is... If the whole game had been like that, which is very ridiculous to sustain, of course, it would be... I would very highly regard it. But I think, like, level design-wise, Ninja Theory's DMC game is way more exciting, even though it does have those boring levels. But this was just sort of like that all the way through, except for the end, and then that was a bummer to me. I was promised craziness, and it certainly got there, but it took way longer than I was hoping.
Yeah, I would...
Which is too bad.
I would agree on the lack of environmental difficulty, but I think for me, I was just enjoying the combat so much, and the pacing of the game so much, that kind of faded away and became a little bit irrelevant to my enjoyment of the experience. And it might have helped that I beat it in a very small amount of sessions, because I really got into it quite quickly, and there just hasn't been much out. I'm a bit desperate right now when it comes to video games. Like, I'll take anything I can get. And also, I haven't played a game in the comfy lounge on the PlayStation Pro in the nice setup this year. I haven't played... I think Spider-Man was the last game I played on a Pro. So it was just like a change of pace for me, being a nice, comfy gaming experience. So I really got into the flow. And without that, I think beating it in almost 2 sessions really helped me to keep a grip on the different characters. And I just think the variety in those 3 characters and how each system... I was going to say each system could maybe have its own game, but I don't 100% agree on that because of V. I do like V, but I don't think he could be a whole game.
Yeah, you're right.
On his own.
He doesn't really change much.
But I do think they should be commended for achieving 3 varied and competent and fun different combat styles in one game. Like, if I was a developer, I'd be sneaky and shelf one. I'm like, well, we got to make a sequel. I'm just going to tuck this away for the future. But no.
Yeah.
And that, for me, was a great pacing mechanism. I really enjoyed switching between the characters. And I couldn't really decide which one I liked the most. I found Nero to be a bit overwhelming at first, because you get a lot of devil triggers, his little arms, very quickly.
Yeah.
And I was like, fucking hell, I've got 7 arms. I don't even know what any of them do.
I didn't understand that system for quite a long time.
Me neither.
I thought you could... I was like, how do you switch between the arms? And it's like, no, you destroy it and lose the other one. I'm like, oh, I didn't get that for a very long time.
Yeah, I didn't even know you could hold down circle. I think I missed that tutorial for like a big mega attack. And I was like, oh, I didn't know.
I don't know if I knew that either.
Yeah.
That should speak to how experienced we are with these video games.
So then I was enjoying V more, because V's kind of a bit casual. He kind of plays himself a little bit. It's very easy. I don't know. We played on the easy difficulty, so it feels a little bit, you know, reductive to just say the game was easy. But I found V to kind of play itself. But it was visually really cool. I like the style of V, the way he's reading poetry around the battlefield, and there's a goddamn silly panther and a crow and a big sludge monster. It's just ridiculous, and I love the visuals of V stuff. And then I just, when I clicked with Nero, I was like, damn, I think I like Nero more. And then Dante came along. I was like, you know what? Dante's the best. And I just had this really fun back and forward with the different playstyles and the different characters, where I was like going back and forth between which one I liked more. And as I got deeper with each character, I just kind of became, you know, more into that character. And the diversity and some complexity that I got into was really rewarding to me. I loved the triple character setup for the pacing, and for once, I actually have started replaying Devil May Cry. And I say for once, because I don't really replay games very often. I have a weird brain, and I just like to try and tick off as many games and get to new experiences. But when I came out the end of DMC5, this might be because I'm not very experienced with the genre, but I just didn't feel like I had mastered any of them. Maybe V. V's pretty easy. But I just didn't feel like I had a grip on Nero or Dante. And I was like, I want to get back in, and I want to see if I can actually get good at the game. Who knows if I'm going to ever get there, because I'm halfway through normal mode, and I'm still like getting A's and B's. So who knows if I'm ever going to be good at the game. But yeah.
You have to turn on the pre-visualization cutscenes for the second half of that game, because they're really good.
Yeah, I don't really know enough about these games to go like super deep and analyze the combat systems. I don't have much experience. I just know that as a pacing mechanism, I found it hard to put down. I think they achieved 3 fun, varied combat systems, and I just had a blast fighting stuff all the way through. I don't really recall finding any of the fights or enemy designs frustrating. I think the boss visuals are some of the most impressive like boss animations I've seen in any games. The bosses look fucking crazy, especially in 4K. I'm just saying, the particles on those bosses, oof, they look good. But yeah, I wish I knew more about the genre to go like deep into the combat system, but I just found it kind of easy to get to grips with, and I enjoyed all 3 characters.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Yeah, I mean, there's a reason we're not doing like a standalone review for it. We're just completely unqualified.
Yes, we are unqualified for sure.
Yeah, that's sort of my gist of it. Is like, I wish it was way crazier, and I wish you could just stick with one character. I think it would make sense for a replay. You know, I totally get it for the first time through, but it would have been. I probably would have replayed that whole game with the previous live-action cutscenes enabled, and if I could just play Dante, I would probably replay most of that game.
What did you think of the weird co-op cameo system? That's what they call it, a cameo system.
Didn't understand it at all. I don't think they ever explained it, or if they did, I missed it.
So
I never saw anything. Sometimes I would just get a thing that said, rate this guy, and I was like, well, I'm not going to not give him stylish, so good job, but I have no idea what that was. Like, I literally have no idea. I one time heard some fighting happening somewhere, but I think it was just I don't know if it was another. It happened late in the game when there's like it made sense for it to be with the other story character to be there.
Yeah.
But maybe that was a human. I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah, if you see a character, it is another player.
It's like their data.
I don't know. I think it might be live because
I think it's their data because I don't know how you would invade is the wrong word, but you know what I mean. Like I don't know how you would invade someone else's game.
Well, when you load one of those levels, it says searching for session, and then it has their name on the left. And I think one time I paused it when it made some food, and it had a different name. So I assume it just like unsynced. I don't know. They haven't really like gone into detail about how it works, but I know it's other players. You might be right. It might just be a replay of what they did. But there are some levels where you can actually not just see them in the distance, but you cross paths with them properly.
Oh, weird. No, I never saw any of that.
I had that in 2 levels. One was V and Nero, and one's when you can choose between all 3 of them. Someone who's playing Dante bumped into me.
Nope. Like I said, I heard a fight happening once in the distance. I was like, what's going on? I'm confused.
Oh, that's a shame.
Saw like the rate someone's style 3 times, and that was it. And I was like, okay, I don't know what's happening.
That's a bit of a bummer. Because it's weird to have like an under... what was the word I was going to use? Like almost like a subtle multiplayer version. I don't know. It's a really weird system.
It's weird that it's in there, yeah.
But I think it's kind of neat. It's a little bit confusing. I think understated was the word I was looking for. It's just like this really small thing, but they've obviously like set up servers for it, and I don't know, it's an experimental and unique idea, and I think it's kind of neat, especially when you play the other side and you see someone like playing as Nero, etc. Yeah, I thought it was cool. From like a tech point of view, I've never seen someone do like a really understated and subtle co-op experience where it's not really co-op, they're just in the background doing their own thing. It's weird, but it's interesting.
Very in the background, apparently.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
Gotta get the binoculars out for me, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. The story is nonsense, but it knows that. The whole game is very good about, like, it's pretty self-serious, but in a way that, like, in a trashy way. Like,
yeah.
They know what they're doing, I would say. It's not a funny game for the most part, but they know, like the Capcom, everyone that made the game understands what they're doing with the tone. There are moments of comedy for sure. Like I loved all of the intro funny things what they do with the van shop every time you call her, and there's some
always finds a way.
Like, yeah, it's so funny.
Yeah, that's great.
And I was cheering or laughing, I don't know. I was making excited noises for the last hour or so of that game because they really do get there big time by the end of that game. Like they really, the last hour of that game is definitely one of the best last hours of a game I've played in quite a while. It really ended on a high note for me and definitely improved my overall opinion of it, because if it hadn't achieved that level of craziness that I was hoping for, I would have been just giving this game a big shrug, basically.
I will say I was disappointed when Dante and another person go off to do something and you don't really get to play that mission. Maybe because I was just enjoying myself and I was like, hell yeah, let's do more stuff. And then it's just like a little credits thing. I was like, oh, I kind of wanted to do that mission. I felt like a tease. Yeah. Maybe DLC is coming up, who knows?
Maybe, yeah. Yeah. Also, it looks very good. I think in-game, gameplay looks solid. I think the quality of the environments let it down, but like the particles and animations and all that are really good.
Yeah, the boss fights look really impressive, I thought.
And the character models look good, but the cutscenes are really wild looking.
Yeah, I think all the characters and all the voice actors did a really good job. I thought.
Yeah.
A lot of charisma, a lot of goofiness, and I pretty much enjoyed all of the cutscenes, even though didn't really understand what was going on. It's kind of similar to our Resident Evil 2 talk, where we're just so behind on the franchise but it's just gibberish at this point for us.
Yeah, Resident Evil 2 is a little, easier. It's like, evil corporation doing tests. It's like, okay, I can understand that part of it. But this is like, I don't know, there's a giant demonic tree that sucks blood. I don't know.
I don't know.
I have no idea. But yeah, like, the characters are all kind of like cringy and emo in a way, but like, again, it's all presented well, and like the voice actors do a good job, everyone seems to understand what they're doing. Like, it's very self-serious, and V is always like, I'm reading poetry in this, and it's very...
You actually sound
and
quite like him.
Nier's a bit of a whiny bitch, and Dante is just like this cocky asshole, and everybody, they do a really good job with the character stuff, and the cutscenes were very compelling. And that helps that it looks so ridiculously good, the cutscenes.
I will say, one thing I did find a little bit weird is it does look quite close to Resident Evil 2 visually at times. You know what I mean?
The character models especially, yeah.
Yeah. It has
this engine has that style, like the sort of over-animated almost, I don't know.
It doesn't look just like it. It's almost like a cousin of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's close enough where I'm like, this looks a little bit like RE2. Not a bad thing, but just something I wanted to point out.
Totally, yeah.
I think my only other complaint is there are a lot of loading times.
There are, yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that.
I've only started noticing it more because I was replaying it and I forgot to switch over to those pre-viz cutscenes, which I do want to watch. But before that, I was like, I've seen this cutscene, I'm going to skip it. And if you're skipping cutscenes, which I assume a lot of people will be doing if they're playing it 3 or 4 times, there's a lot of loading screens because it has to load the cutscenes. And sometimes there's like 2 or 3 of them. It's got a lot of cutscenes in the game. So if you're just skipping them, sometimes it's 2 to 3 loading bars before getting into the mission.
Jeez. And you have to load to like get to the shop and get back out of the shop.
Yeah.
There's definitely a lot of loads, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, it's a minor complaint. For me, the pacing and actually getting into all 3 combat systems was enough for me to have an absolute blast all the way through. And I thought the bosses were visually amazing and varied and fun. And I look forward to slowly replaying it. I don't know how many times I'm going to beat it. There is one mode which sounds really fun where everyone is one hit. I think it's called Heaven or Hell mode. And all the enemies are one hit. And that just sounds really fun to blast through. So I think I'm going to try and get to that mode.
That sounds pretty good. Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad you're sort of having like the RE7 experience that I had, where it's like you just want to replay it a bunch and get all the weird shit unlocked, which is good.
I think it was just like expectations. I wasn't expecting anything, and maybe just my mood at the time. Like a fast-paced action game in my sitting down in my armchair for once instead of at the computer.
It's nice to play like a 10-hour game where you just can sit on the couch and relax, and it's only 10 hours long and pretty mindless when you're playing on easy.
It really, for some reason, it reminded me of the energy and the feeling I got from playing Doom, where I was just like, this rocks. It had that same type of like, violent energy for me. And I'm just saying, Doom Eternal has got some work to do for me. That's all I'm gonna say. Because DMC is like my favorite action game, and I think it's better than Doom. I'm just gonna say it.
Well, I don't like I don't like that style of combat in any way. So you know.
Yeah.
I don't feel much. I think I also just have problems with the pacing of these games because Bayonetta is the same way, DMC is the same way, where you like run around for like 30 seconds, you fight like 6 enemies, then it gives you a big rating, and then you watch cutscene, and then you do that again, and then the level ends, and I don't know, it's something with the genre where it's more or less the same structurally for all those games, and I just I've never really liked that. I never feel like I can get into a flow. I don't know. Like I wanted the
digestible because of that.
Yeah, like I only ever played in like 2 mission chunks as well, so it'd be like an hour, maybe 90 minutes, you know, which it was pretty digestible, but I feel like I'm never able to get into a flow because the combat is really quick as well. I don't know. I sort of prefer longer stretches of playing, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense. Where it's like I'd rather play for like 30 minutes and then spend 5 minutes in cutscenes and then another 30 minutes or something, but it's whatever. People that like Devil May Cry seem to be really loving the combat in this game, which is good to see, especially Dante.
God, it's good.
Because
Dante has the best in-game weapon in video games. I'm putting it out there. I don't think it's a new weapon
pretty good
for DMC, but I've never seen it before, so I think it's fucking crazy. Man,
it's pretty good.
I pretty much only use that weapon as well.
You know what would be pretty good is if Doom Guy used that weapon in Doom Eternal.
Yeah.
He could totally use that thing.
He just punches Dante in the face and takes it off of him. That'd be pretty sweet.
Oh my god.
That would be amazing.
Doing that.
Are we rating this? We doing our stars?
Oh, sure. Yeah, if you want to.
Well, we haven't really... Have we decided the way we're doing this? Are we doing one score? Are we having our own scores?
There's no rules. It only really comes into play when we do a standalone review, really.
Yes, that is true. And since we're not doing a DMC5 standalone review, I guess it doesn't matter that we're probably going to have some conflict when it comes to the amount of stars we're going to give it.
Probably, yeah.
Because, well, are we doing... Is there half stars? If there's not half stars, this is a 5-star game for me.
I still haven't decided because I haven't needed to do a half-star game for a review yet. And it only becomes real once it's gotten a review. A standalone review.
If it's half stars, it's 4.5. If it's full stars, it's 5 stars.
I think half stars are a cop-out.
5 stars. Fuck it.
There you go.
Take it.
There you go. I don't even feel... I don't know. I don't even feel like I'm able to give it a score because it's like...
Well, at least you're honest about, you know...
My time with it is like probably a 3-star time with it, except for the end, which was like 5 stars. The last hour was like 5-star experience. The last 90 minutes maybe was like a 5-star experience. Everything else I was just kind of like, this is good. Like, it's one of those things where I know it's well made.
Yeah.
But I just don't, like, it just doesn't click with me very much. And I knew that going in. Like, and so you
respect it more than you enjoy it.
Yeah, like, I don't really, I mean, I can't hold it against the game that it's like, I know this genre is not for me. Like,
yeah.
Just fundamentally. So, like.
People will get it. As long as you're open about that stuff, people will get it.
Yeah, so, I mean, but it makes me feel like I shouldn't even put a rating on it because I just don't feel, like, qualified to do that.
Okay, so what you're saying is just 5 stars.
Sure, there you go.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. God, the game
5 and
awesome.
3, 5 and 4. I don't know, man. Who cares?
7 stars out of 5.
7-star game out of 5.
Hell yeah, that's what it deserves. This game's awesome.
I'm surprised you I didn't know that you liked it so much.
Me too. Cool. I was not expecting it.
Yeah, who would have thought? I was gonna say like, of the 2 big Capcom games, RE2 is much more my thing. Much more enjoyable.
Fair.
Even though, man, the last hour of DMC5 was good.
Hell yeah. Well, talking about...
God.
Let's move on from something really exciting...
and something completely boring.
Well, I shouldn't talk. We're moving on to The Division 2, which I have not played. It's going to be very similar to the way we did Anthem last month, where I just kind of look at the lifestyle game and push it into Jamison's lap and say, you deal with that. And
it's honestly similar to the DMC thing, where it's like, you know, but even more so of an extreme, where it's like, you just don't like these games. They're not for you.
I can...
Or you have the potential maybe to like them, but...
Yes, the mood can strike every now and then, but not very often. I remember last year I was like, I'm going to play The Division 1 because I was in the mood to just shoot shit and listen to podcasts. And that just happens to me every now and then, but on a regular day-to-day basis, not really, no.
Yeah, so it's The Division 2 is out. We got codes for it.
Thanks, Ubi.
Spoilers, I guess. I don't know. I played through the first game when it came out, which was, 3 years ago, I think? Right around this time of year, 3 years ago.
I can't remember because I played it very late.
I played it on the Xbox One for a laugh.
Christ.
And I played through that game, hit the max level, played a little bit more after that. It was like, 30 hours or so. For over 2 or 3 weeks, and then I never touched it again.
Yeah, I played 10 hours of The Division, and I thought it was boring. Jesus.
So I'll preface just a little bit here, and I'll preface it as well in the standalone review, is that I did not keep up with The Division at all. And they made a lot of changes to The Division 1.
Yeah.
I booted it up recently, And then again, after playing The Division 2, I was like, man, this game is a lot like The Division 2. Like, the first game didn't have a gear score. It didn't have much content after you beat the campaign. There were a lot of, like, sort of system-y changes to The Division 1 that came long after launch that are just in The Division 2 on day one. So there will be some things that I talk about that are like, I think this is new. Maybe it's not. It's new, let's say, compared to launch day of The Division 1. And I also was going to say something that I've forgotten.
Sick.
Oh, yeah. The Division 2 is an ongoing game. So I always feel a little weird reviewing those as well, because they like sometimes they can undergo pretty amazing changes in a very short period of time.
But people are paying for it now, so.
Exactly, you're right. So I've played like 35 hours of it in like a week. It was I would not have played so much in such a short span of time if I wasn't sort of interested in getting a fairly thorough review out quickly.
The things you do for the craft, mate.
I didn't want to, I didn't want to rush through it. I wanted to be thorough. So, I sort of surprised myself with that playtime. The first 10 hours or so of this game I thought were really fucking boring. It was weird. When they announced The Division 2, I was like, yeah, sure. And then I'm on board with that. And then the closer we got to it, I was like, man, I don't know. I don't know if I need The Division in my life, because the first game also came out when Destiny was sort of boring again. It wasn't bad. Destiny was
you'd also played like a bunch of Anthem, and I think new Destiny content was just coming out. So
yeah, so like the first game came out when Destiny was boring, not bad, just like not much content coming out. So it was like, I haven't played much Destiny. I'm in the mood for one of these games. Done. This comes out at a time after Destiny has gotten to the best it's ever been, and is very content rich and ongoingly content rich. And I was sort of thinking Anthem would be good, but then after I played Anthem, I was like, I'm actually kind of looking forward to The Division 2 because it should be well made at the very least.
Yeah.
Which it is. And then I got into it, and like I said, the first 5, 8, 10, maybe even 10 hours, maybe it was more like 7, I don't know. I was just really having a hard time getting into it. And I don't know why, because it's not like it changes all that much.
Okay.
I mean, it's, you shoot humans with regular modern guns, and you get gear that makes the number go up. And that's...
Okay.
So I don't really know why. It might have just been a mindset thing. But I eventually had it click with me, and I would say, just broadly speaking, The Division 2 is good. It's quite good. It's a very solid, very complete package. There are a few things that I'm very curious about that are not in the game yet, that are sort of like really end game things, but they said they're coming soon.
Raids? Question mark?
There is a raid. There's the first time they're doing a raid. It's 8 players. They said it's coming soon.
I can't believe the original game didn't have raids. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they introduced something called incursions, which were they were not raids though. The first game did not ever get raids, which was surprising. Yeah, so there are a couple of things that I'm like, I almost think like maybe I should do like a little mini, really small follow-up video after I've seen the raid.
Oh, why not?
I don't know.
Yeah, people seem to really enjoy the Anthem thing, so. If there's ever any major expansions, I don't see why they can't get their own little standalone update impressions.
Yeah. So, these games are always... I never even know where to start with it. Gameplay, very similar to the first game. The shooting still feels good. I think it's a good playing third-person shooter.
Yeah, I mean, the first one felt fine.
Yeah, I think the gunplay feels good. The recoil control is very easy on the PC, which I didn't really realize until starting this game. It's like, turns out shooting guys with automatic weapons on a controller at 30 frames per second is a lot harder than doing it on PC with a mouse at 120 FPS.
Yeah.
You just sort of slowly drag your mouse down and you hit every single shot with an automatic weapon. But anyways, the the gameplay foundation, I think, is very solid. I think that the best thing they do with gameplay is their movement system is really slick and fluid. Like being able to, you just auto sprint, with one click, and then you just hold down a button and you'll just clamber, slide over anything that gets in your way. It's sort of a very light parkour-like system. The first game was exactly the same. It's just a good feeling game, I think, fundamentally, which is coming off of Anthem. That's a thumbs up. Your game feels good to play 90% of the time. Great.
Yeah.
Mission accomplished. Check it off the box. Gameplay-wise, there are a few problems. The one problem I have gameplay... Well, there's two. Sometimes it's a little unresponsive for you to move. Where you're like, oh, I need to get out of this cover right now. And you like... I just feel like the roll takes a little too long. And there's like a delay between rolls. Combat rolls to like get out of... Anyways, it's a small thing that happened a couple of times where it's like, I couldn't get out of this area in a smooth enough manner, and I got killed, and that's frustrating. But that's pretty minor. They've expanded their gameplay systems a decent amount with the first game had skills, which were like your abilities that you could pick, and there was like 9 of them or so. And they weren't very interesting. It was like the one that everyone used was like you could get like a turret. I think it was a turret, or it was like some sort of sticky bomb, and you could use like you could put down like a healing device, and that I feel like that's all anyone ever used in the first game. This one they've expanded it. I think there are 8 different skill types, and then so there's like a drone, there's a shield, there's a turret, there's like a little rolling golf ball that explodes that follows you around. There's a chemical launcher. There's like a magic healing device. So there's 8 of those skills, and each of them has 4 different versions, basically. So like the drone, one of them will fly around and shoot enemies. Another one of them will fly around you and create like a barrier in front of you to try and like sort of deflect enemy bullets. The chemical launcher, you can launch like a healing gas, or you can launch a flammable gas, or you can launch a corrosive gas, and one other one that I can't remember. Oh, a cement. You can launch it's like riot foam that you can shoot at an enemy, and it like locks them in place for like a few seconds while they try and break out of it, which is kind of neat. Yeah. So they've successfully expanded the gameplay options, I think, quite substantially with the skill system. There's a lot of versatility to what you can use. You can only have 2 equipped at once, but there are many options, and a lot of them seem very, very effective. And those get much more interesting when you're playing with other people, and you're playing on a slightly higher difficulty, or it's more challenging where you have to, use your they do a good job of making you need to use your abilities regularly, which is good, which is an improvement over the first game. The enemy variety is quite good. There are
What?
4.
Really?
Well, okay, I mean, visually, no. Like, they're all human beings, right? Like, the legibility, I think, is one of the problems with it, is that, like, they just all look like humans. And often, at a distance, I can't really tell which faction they are. Once they start playing, once you start fighting them, you sort of realize, oh, this is these guys. Okay, this makes sense. And I know who they are, but sometimes at a distance you're like, are these the guys with yellow on their jacket or green? I don't know. But yeah, there's a faction that's like really explosives heavy. There's guys with like TNT strapped to their chest that just run at you, and you can shoot the TNT and cause it to explode. They have like Molotovs, and they have little RC cars with TNT on them as well that they drive towards you. Or the boss variant of that faction has a fucking RC car with saw blades on the front.
Hey, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, they drive that towards you, and it'll cause you to bleed, which skips your armor. You have armor now in this game as well. So in the first game, it was just a health bar. In this, you have a health bar and then an armor on top. It's basically like your bulletproof vest, essentially. And that gets depleted first, and then your health bar, and the armor doesn't replenish. You have to heal it basically, and you get like 5 heals or something. Anyway, it's not a very substantial change. But back to enemies. So there's like that faction. There's another faction that's like really into drugs, and one of the enemies just like takes a hit of like radical green gas and runs at you, goes all crazy, gets more HP, and just runs at you to punch you. There's a third faction that I'm completely forgetting right now. And then there's a fourth faction that only comes in once you've beaten the game. And they are like the super military faction who have like fucking robot drone dogs that run around and shoot you. You know that? What's that?
I actually think I've seen it in the trailer. The robot dog.
What's the like big dog robot or whatever?
Big dog. The one
robot? That what's it? Boston Dynamics big dog. You know this one? Here, I'm just gonna link it to you.
Okay.
It's the one that the guy like kicks. You know, and it.
Yes. For some reason, I was thinking in a video game.
Yeah, the Metal Gear looking robot. That's real though.
Yeah.
They have things like that with like Boston Dynamics.
Those guys are nuts.
Yeah. So they have you know, robots like that walk around the battlefield, which is interesting. They have little drones that they throw out. They have EMPs that they throw at you. The enemy variety is much improved over the first game. I don't remember anything about the enemies from the first game except for sometimes they would have a flamethrower.
Yeah, I don't remember any unique and interesting abilities or behaviors.
Yeah. So that's probably the biggest change gameplay-wise, is that there's a lot more variety to the enemies, and they're fairly different to fight against a lot of the times. You know, one of them has like a guy who can go around and revive enemies that you've killed, and heal them and give them different ammo types, and there's a lot of variety there, which is cool. Fuck man, there's so much. Spoilers, it's a Ubisoft game, so there's a fucking lot going on. What were you going to say?
I just wanted to not push you in a direction, but the thing I'm most interested about is I played the first mission.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, like environmentally and visually, this is like pretty varied and interesting. And I was like, is it just like the pilot of a new show where they put it all into the first mission because you're clearing out these enemies near the White House? Which is, I think, the base, right? The hub? And I was like, I might play the campaign, but I might as well wait to this talk and let you confirm that it is at least interesting and varied. Because, like, I mean, I'd beat the game if it's like 20, 30 hours of fun shooting stuff. I'll be in the mood eventually for something like that.
So it's interesting. Okay. I think the game looks a lot worse than the first game.
Yeah, you said that, which is interesting to me.
I think on the PC, I haven't seen the console version. So on the PC, the first game had a lot of pretty crazy graphics tech in it.
It looked really good.
And had a really amazingly sharp, clean image quality. And the setting of New York City was much better and more interesting, I think, to look at than Washington.
It was snowy at times as well. Snow always just looks good.
Exactly. Like, New York is a cooler city, just generally speaking, right? Like, it's a beloved city, it's a famous city for a reason. Washington has, like, those 4 government buildings that everyone knows of, and I don't know what else is in Washington.
Yeah.
So I think the setting is a big step back. In terms of like out and about in the open world, it all just sort of looks the same. It's all just sort of a slightly overgrown and slightly ruined city. Whereas the first game, I loved the sort of gloomy winter, Christmas time, like lighting everywhere, combined with this like super crisp, clean, state-of-the-art graphics. So I think visually and setting-wise, this game is actually a surprisingly big step down. But it makes up for it a bit in the missions, which all take place, like the first game, they all take place in unique interiors. And the interiors are much more varied than the first game. There's definitely still a lot of, hotels and parking lots and generic, regular environments. But you go through, like, 3 different types of museums. You go through like a Native American museum. You go through a train museum, which is fun.
Nice.
You go through a like jet propulsion lab, which has, you know, tons of ultra clean room white interiors, along with like an exhibit, which is like a recreation of Mars. So you're like fighting in an area that looks like Mars.
Cool. I feel like the Ubisoft environmental team is just so far above all the other teams at Ubisoft.
They do a very good job, yeah.
Like the Assassin's Creed games, like the environmental stuff is always so good.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So the interiors are really good. Every one of them has their own personality, I would say, or for the most part, there's like at least a dozen or so that are like very distinct. There's one where you go through like a newsroom, a news facility, and there's like fucking TVs on the entire wall and ceiling in one area, and they're all like flickering, and it looks like, yeah. So the interiors, I think, are actually really good. They're a big step up from the first game, and that's where the game actually looks quite good. But out and about, not very interesting. But the missions are good, and that that makes up for the sort of step back in visual quality, I would say. There's, you know, the leveling process is very much like the first game. There are main missions and side missions that you do. Those are pretty much identical to the first game, I would say. You know, like structurally. The side missions are a little bit better as well, about taking place in unique areas like the main missions, except they're just smaller. The side missions probably are more fleshed out than the first game, but I just don't remember them very well from the first game. And then there was like, there was like the weird side of events, sort of just world events that would happen in the first game, and that was about it. This definitely has a lot more to do. You know, they Ubisofted it even more, right? Like, there are settlements now. There's like 3 different settlements that you can provide. You don't really do it. It's one of those things where it's like they're building up this base, and like, but you don't really do anything to build up the base. You just sort of do the missions, and they build up the base. The settlements, I thought it was going to be like Far Cry New Dawn, but they don't really serve much purpose, aside from giving you mods, which, you know, they're fine. There's like control points and, you know, all sorts of different world events that come up that are definitely more involved and more varied than the first game, which is good, I guess. I was going to say, also related to gameplay, the enemy AI is a little all over the place. They've clearly programmed in a desire for the AI to flank you, which is good. That's fine. Especially when you're with a team, it makes sense. But it's like the AI designers didn't talk too much with the level designers. I don't know. All the levels are very linear, right? And so you come into the level, and the team just sits at the entrance to the level. And then thus there is no way for the enemy to flank you. But the enemy will try to flank you, and they try that by running directly at you in a straight line past you. While, like, they just haul ass right straight towards you, right behind you, and take cover behind you. And you're just like, why would you run directly at me like that?
I think I've seen that before in some games.
Yeah, and it happens kind of a lot in this game, and it's sort of dumb. But the enemy AI is definitely improved. It's just sort of funny sometimes when they're just like, well, look at this guy flanking us. He's just running directly at. Okay, good luck, bud. Which is sort of... There was also a few times in missions where they spawn enemies. You like clear the room, you go and do a little bit of an objective, then they spawn enemies right on top of you. And there's no way to know where the enemies are going to spawn, and then you get killed, and you have to restart the checkpoint. And there were definitely a few times, more than a few times, where I got in with, you know, I'm just matchmaking with a random group, and it's a little challenging, and we clear it, and then a bunch of enemies spawn where we're not ready for them, and we die, and it feels like the only way to know that where they're going to spawn is to just die once and retry, right?
Yeah.
Because then on the second try, we just have no problem killing everyone. We just stayed at the entrance to the mission, took cover, and waited for them to spawn, which is sort of frustrating, occasionally frustrating. The bullet sponge enemies are still very much a thing. They're maybe a little less bullet spongy in this. I don't know. Bullet sponges aren't a problem, I don't think. It's just more the presentation of them, that they're just human beings, right?
Yeah. I
think it's like, yes, this guy has heavy armor, but like we're shooting like 900 rounds of ammo into his armor. Like, it's a little ridiculous.
I remember when I played the first one, it felt really unsatisfying because of that. And I pretty much just mained it wasn't a sniper, it was like a bolt action rifle that could one-shot, headshot most enemies, not the bosses. But that was the only way I could really get any satisfaction from the gunplay, because it actually felt like I was doing a lot of damage instead of just tickling them for 20 minutes.
Yeah, so that's still very much the case. I would say it's more satisfying to use like a sniper rifle, pick off the red bar, normal enemies, but then like you get the big guys that just have an absolutely ridiculous amount of health, which is it's inherent to the genre, I think, but it just stands out when they're just human beings and you're like, this guy is taking so many bullets, this is so dumb. I don't know, man. Okay, I like the gist of it is leveling up to level 30 is very easy going, straightforward. There's a ton of options for how you get there. And it's very similar to the first game, except that there's more content to do, especially more side content to do. Like that route to level 30 it's very, very similar to the first game. Where the first game failed was when he hit level 30, and it was like, now what? And they said, we didn't think of that. And
we didn't think anyone would get this far.
No. So you got to level 30, you're like, oh, that was fun. And then there was like, now there's nothing to do. Which is, of course, seems to be the problem that all these games always have. Destiny did it twice. The Division did it. Anthem really did it. This game's cool when you get to the max level. They do some cool stuff. Some of it's very smart. So when you get to level 30, they introduce world tiers, which is like there's world 1 or tier 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that basically just sort of refreshes things every time the tier resets and ups the difficulty, which is, I don't know, sort of interesting. They added that to the first game, it turns out. But the neat thing they do is they introduce a new faction when you hit level 30, and this is like a super elite private military faction that basically comes in and takes over the whole map and invades all of the story missions. All the story missions repop back up on the map and say they're now invaded. And what they're basically doing is trying to undo all the things you did in the story missions.
Okay.
And so then you get to go and replay all of the story missions again, but with this new faction. And it's a very smart remixing way. It's a very smart use of their content, where it's like, okay, we have all these levels, and now let's remix them in a way that makes them feel surprisingly different, without actually having to make 15 new missions, right?
Yeah, I think that actually makes sense, because anyone who knows the genre is not gonna count that as a negative, because they know that they can't be cranking out a full campaign every week. So it's kind of an efficient and smart way of getting you to replay the content, but in a way that feels new.
Yeah, so I almost forgot to mention they have 3 of these things called strongholds, just like Anthem, actually, now that I think of it, which are bigger, longer levels. Though, like, the normal missions in Division are like probably 20 minutes. The strongholds are more like 40, 45 minutes. They're just like a really huge version of a mission, again, in a unique area. So you get all these missions that become invaded, and the enemy plays very differently because they're the ones that have all these crazy... Their technology is very similar to your technology, so it's almost like fighting against, yourselves in a way.
The real enemy is always yourself.
And the mission objectives are completely different. The dialogue is completely different. The path is exactly the same, but the layout and presentation of the enemies and stuff like that is completely different. And those invaded missions feel close enough to being new missions, really, which is cool. I think it's a very smart use of that. And so you do enough of the missions, and it then lets you attack one of the strongholds. Same thing, the stronghold has been invaded. It plays out, pretty differently. When you defeat a stronghold, it ups your world tier level, which makes all the enemies harder and the loot better. And then you move on and keep playing missions, do the next stronghold, keep playing missions, do the next stronghold. And then there's a 4th stronghold that's coming soon, they said, which will sort of be like the final tier of world. And apparently a bunch of stuff comes with that 5th world tier, but they just haven't launched it yet. And then there is a raid coming. And also when you hit level 30, you get basically like a super ability. It's sort of like somewhere between a heavy weapon in Destiny and your ultimate ability in any game that has an ultimate ability.
Okay.
You get to pick between a grenade launcher, a sniper rifle, and a crossbow, and they're like just basically super powerful weapons. And they're infrequent ammo drops, but they do like just insane amounts of damage. They have their own skill tree associated with them. You can respec those skill trees at any time. You can swap between any of the 3 weapons whenever you want. There's nothing that stops you from doing that, that's pretty cool. That's a smart thing to add to mix things up a bit as you play more of the game. They're going to be adding 3 more of those specializations down the road, which is good. That's cool. Yeah, there's
stuff.
There's quite a bit there. And then you add in gear and leveling up to the max level, and gear has mod slots on it that I think there's an enormous amount of potential to really make a build in this game in a way that the other ones don't really allow for. Because like Destiny's, you can like sort of spec towards like, I'm going to play PvP and my gear is spec towards that. Or you can, but like that's kind of it. There's not like a huge amount of build specific variety in Destiny. And Anthem, I mean, why would you bother making a build in Anthem? I don't know.
Don't get into that.
Whereas this, it's like there's a lot of different perks on weapons and gear as you get higher up in level, and the mods can enhance those perks. And so I can definitely see, in a month or so, there being like, okay, this person is really spec towards like a glass cannon build, or this guy is just a heavy take cover and shoot and shoot and shoot, and like, maybe he's got a gun that like when you empty the clip and reload, it doubles the rate of fire and damage, which is something that can happen. And I think there's an enormous amount of potential for building very specific characters in this game, which was not present in the first game on day one. I think a lot of it they added to the first game, so it's a little weird, but this is, a day one experience. This has been a rambling, deeply incoherent talk on The Division, I know. These games are weird to just sit down and talk about without much. This is why I like doing the standalone reviews for them, because it helps me just like really organize thoughts for them. But The Division 2 is quite good. It's still inherently kind of boring because of the setting,
Yeah.
You can get like an exotic Kalashnikov, and it's like, okay.
Yeah, I was about to ask, what's weapon variety like? The standard stuff, or?
It's pretty standard.
Okay.
There's apparently like a few exotics in the game, but most of them are like pre-order bonuses, which is lame. You get an exotic in the edition we got, and right at the beginning of the game, and it's just a binary trigger, which means it shoots when you pull the trigger in and when you release the trigger, which is
okay.
But it just shoots once, so it goes boom, boom, and there's crazy recoil, and it just didn't seem very, very interesting. Weapon variety is, it's a modern military game, so there are a bunch of different light machine guns. There's a bunch of different submachine guns, assault rifles, shotguns, snipers, pistols. It's that. There's a decent number of them, but it's still just modern military, so it's never very exciting.
No laser swords.
No laser swords, unfortunately. The weirdness comes from the skills, where you can have like a drone, right, or a little robot bomb that is a ball that rolls around and follows you and then seeks towards enemies.
Yeah.
That's where the weirdest it ever gets. It is definitely still let down by the fact... It's not... I don't know. I feel weird. I don't really want to hold the setting against it because, like, it's very apparent that that's the setting, right? I didn't go in expecting it to get weird and crazy.
Yeah.
I know what I'm getting. I think fashion-wise, it's a big step down from the first game. Summer fashion, like clothing.
Oh, okay.
It's a third-person game. You can see your character. You should be able to make yourself look unique. I think that's an important part of these games.
I never really saw other players when I played Division 1, so I don't know where the cosmetics went in that game. I just looked like a generic guy.
Yeah, well, I mean, so that's, again, part of it is just the setting of, like, you'll never look unique, or you'll never look, like, really weird and exciting. But the first game was set in winter, so you got all the good winter options. You have toques, aka beanies, winter jackets of all sorts, snow pants, boots. There was a good amount of fashion variety in the first game, I thought. And they did a better job of displaying it. Like, it has a bit of that PUBG problem where your backpack and bulletproof vest go on top of the gear. I would love it. They should probably just have, like, an option to hide that stuff, honestly. So you can just see, like, your clothes that you're wearing. But, like, in the first game, I managed to get, like, a cool purple jacket and a beanie with a toque with a pom-pom on top of it. And, and then in this game, it's like, well, it's summer now. And, it's like, I got jeans and a shirt on. And it's just, there's not as much of it in this game, it feels like. And it feels like the gear that you equip covers up more of that than in the first game. So that's a little, like, everyone sort of looks the same. The only thing that really stands out are the hats, because there's no gear that you put on your head. So it's like, oh, this guy's got a red beret on, and I've got a baseball cap, and that guy's got a cowboy hat. But that's sort of it. So it's one of those things that's like...
It's like the Team Fortress 2 format.
Yeah, a little bit. But it's just one of those things that's sort of a letdown a little bit, but it's also inherent to just the setting, where it's like, things are never going to look too wild. But in that regard, I think there is less variety than the first game. It's a little buggy. It's a little janky. It's nothing. It's all very peripheral, very harmless bugs, I would say. I had one where I wasn't able to move after being revived, which that wasn't very fun. I had to just quit the game. But it only happened once. I had one hard crash with no error, which was unfortunate. But when I rebooted the game, it immediately put me back in the mission that I was playing
without good.
Asking or anything, that is good. Yeah, I had one time where a piece of, like, no texture white terrain spawned on a staircase, and I couldn't walk up the staircase.
Oh, that's interesting.
Which was really weird. I couldn't shoot through it or do anything. There's a little bit of jank in there, but it's the type that is, for the most part, peripheral and very harmless. There's apparently a bug, though, that right now where you can't... some of the skills just don't work. Like, you click the button and they don't deploy. I haven't encountered that, I don't think. But that's no bueno, because that's, like, a core part of the combat is your skills. And if you can't use your skills, then half of the game sort of doesn't exist. But
it's not bricking PS4s, so...
No, you're right. But they've also, like... That team is... I mean, it's Ubisoft. They're very good at supporting their games. But the Division 1 had, like, really incredible support. Even though it took them a while to get there. But they did a lot to the first game. And... I mean, the first game was the one where they, like, delayed major expansions because they wanted to better improve the core of the game before they even released DLC, which is very irregular. And they seem very, like, quick to communicate and clearly have a lot planned for it down the road, which is good. So I would say if you stuck with the Division 1, I bet the Division 2 isn't that impressive, because a lot of the stuff they added to the Division 1 is just there again in 2. except it's there on day one. Like, the world tiers are there. The gear score stuff is there. There's a lot of content in the first game now. But if you're like me, which I think a lot of people did what I did, which is, you know, played it and then moved on.
Yeah.
It's a good sequel to the first game. It does have a bit of that Destiny 2 problem where you're like, okay, let me get the binoculars out here to spot the difference between the first game and the second game, because it's a very minorly iterative sequel for sure. But in terms of the big one, which is content on day one, it is probably the most feature complete.
I mean, that's pretty important at this moment, because it's been the biggest problem with, you know, Division 1, Destiny 1, and now Anthem.
Yeah. You know, Destiny suffered from it twice with both games.
Yeah.
And Destiny is very much not content starved anymore, I would say. There's a lot of stuff in that game. Anthem is desperately in need of content. But this has, you know, the campaign's about 20 hours. Pretty varied all the way through in terms of missions. And then the end game unlocks, and there's a lot of potential in the end game. It feels fresh. The end game feels fresh and different. The gameplay itself, it's we were talking about, like, oh, it's, you know, it's one of those games that's better with friends, but does that actually mean the gameplay is better with other people?
Yeah, or is it just you like hanging out with that person?
Yeah, and I do think The Division is one of those games that is absolutely better with other people in both senses.
Okay.
Like, it's more...
It complements the gameplay.
Yeah, like, it's more fun to play with someone when you're talking to them, obviously, because the story is trash in this game, and why would you ever pay any attention to it? But then gameplay-wise, it is more engaging with another person because of the ways in which, like, the variety of skills, the ways in which those skills can complement each other. In that regard, it's a very big step up from the first game. So I think I was at my most bored with the game in the first day or two, which was mainly when I was playing it solo. I was having trouble matchmaking, you know, because it wasn't really out yet for most people. And then once I was able to just matchmake, you know, you can matchmake seamlessly into every mission, which is fantastic. The whole game has matchmaking. Literally everything is matchmaking in it. Fuck you, Destiny. Like, they don't care. And that's good because the game is much more fun when other people are there. You don't even have to be talking to them. It's just when the skills are triggering and playing off each other, it's quite enjoyable. And the further in I have gotten, the more engaging those scenarios have become, because people, as they get higher level, they find their build, they find their abilities that they like, and you get to a point where it's like, now we're like, anytime I matchmake into something, we just sort of plow through it, like breeze through it in a way that you weren't doing in the first 20 hours of the game, because you're getting more powerful, which is good. Like, oh wow, they made a game where you can feel a little more powerful near the end of it, huh? What a concept, Anthem. So yeah, there's like really very little, I think that there's very little negative to say with The Division. In most regards, it's an improvement.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
It's very content rich. There's going to be more coming very soon. But I definitely do think, for me, Destiny's the only one that I need. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I can definitely see someone picking up The Division and be like, this is the only one I need, is The Division 2. This will satisfy me for years. Or, you know, for many, many dozens of hours.
Yeah.
It's just one of those games, like, I've had a very good time with it, but, like, there's nothing about it that is extraordinary, right? It's a Ubisoft game. Ubisoft are the kings this gen of making very competent, very solid, very content-rich, I was going to say middle of the road or mediocre, but that is unfair. But you know what I mean? It's just like, they're crowd pleasers. They are the kings of crowd pleasers right now. You can shut your brain off. You walk every 30 seconds, you find something to do, and it's very quick to complete and reward you. And I don't really care for that format in most of the other Ubisoft games, but in this one, the first game in this one is the one that's clicked with me the most of their games this gen, I would say.
Wow, okay.
well, just, you know, I'm sort of tired of Assassin's Creed. Far Cry's never been for me.
True, the competition isn't that stacked for Ubisoft games.
Yeah, but like all of Ubisoft's stuff has been so solid, I would say. You know, they have a goal of pleasing the masses, and they achieve that goal over and over again with their games. And this one seems like the most one of those, I would say. So yeah, it's good.
Cool.
It's a 4-star product.
4-star. Ooh, all right.
I think, you know, if I don't think the setting would ever allow for a 5-star experience unless their raid is fucking crazy, which I really don't think it will be. I mean, you know, the raids in Destiny go pretty wild, but like the setting allows for that. Like, I don't know, would there be puzzles in a raid in Division? Like, what would those look like? I don't know. But we'll be finding out soon enough, and that's cool. I think you also sort of hit weak. I don't know what I'm saying. I just lost. When you have matchmaking available for everything, right? Mm-hmm. You can never design anything to be that complicated.
Because you need communication.
Yeah, or you need to design it in a way that, like, if people aren't communicating, they can still figure it out.
Right.
Which is why, like, Destiny should have matchmaking for their story missions. Destiny should have matchmaking for Nightfalls. Because the story missions are, I mean, a breeze, and they're more enjoyable when someone else is there making orbs and killing things with you. The Nightfalls are not complicated. You just kill things. The raids, you know, should never, ever, ever, ever have matchmaking, ever. It would be fucking terrible.
Yes. I remember in my very short time playing Anthem, there was one puzzle we tried to do, and it was something, I think we were talking while I was doing it, and it was something on colored gates with 4 of us.
Yes.
And it took like 15 minutes because we couldn't talk to each other.
I forgot to mention those puzzles when we did Anthem. There were like 3 or 4 different puzzle types that show up like very late in the game, only like once or twice, and they suck because you're like, they're not particularly complicated to figure out.
Yeah.
But this is a game that has, like, you play like 15 hours and there's no puzzles, and then they're suddenly like, oh, here's a puzzle. And you're playing with people, and they're like, no one gets it except for you, and you're like, get out of my fucking way, idiots. Let me solve this puzzle. But you can't communicate, and it was garbage. And I think Ubisoft is smart, you know, and I suspect, like, all the content in their game, you just shoot things.
Yeah.
It's not complicated. You don't need to communicate. So I'll be very curious to see what their raid is like. I suspect it'll just be shooting things. With you know, maybe there'll be a cool boss at the end. Maybe there'll be a boss mechanic.
Yeah, I can't really think of what they could do mechanically, but we'll see, I guess.
Yeah. So, whereas Destiny is like, you know, they can inherently do basically whatever they want because of their setting. And I think there are a lot of small quality of life things in the Division that still stand out as being great, that were there in the first game and are still great here. It's like, you never have to worry about ammo. They just put an ammo box like every 30 feet in the Division. You just, fucking who cares? You have ammo. Easy. You know, there's seamless, like, the matchmaking is so slick and quick and easy and effective. You're out in the world, you walk up, and the, like, UI overlay for the mission start pops up, and you just say, matchmake me with someone. And it says, okay, we're doing it. And then it says, we found someone. Do you want to join them? And you click yes. And then you very quickly load, and you're standing right where you left off. And then you start the mission, you know? And there's matchmaking for every single thing in that game. And that's great. And there's just, you can seamlessly load into the multiplayer. You just walk up to the Dark Zone checkpoint and walk through the checkpoint, and you're in competitive multiplayer. And that stuff is cool, especially after Anthem, where you have to fucking load to do everything, including check your inventory. So I think if you're coming off of Anthem, or you were going to play Anthem and then didn't, basically the Division 2 looks it looks even better after Anthem coming out. But I do think every time I play one of these, Anthem, Division, whatever, I am reminded of the fact that Destiny is still the one for me. But the Division 2 is very solid. All of their DLC for the first year will be free, which is fantastic. I don't think anyone should buy the fancy editions of this game because all of the DLC will be free. And all you get for buying their season pass is 1 week early access to that content. And some, cosmetics.
Yeah.
So don't buy the fancy edition. But if you like the first game and bounced off of it, or, if you didn't come back to it, if you wanted to like Anthem and hated it because it's Anthem, or if you're tired of Destiny, whatever, Division 2 is all around very solid, very competently made, content rich, more content coming very soon, a year of free content. It's Ubisoft. I would call them a generous developer, right? Like, their products are generous. People seem obsessed with time played equals value, right? Like, that seems to be the metric right now. It's like, how long is it? How much time can I get out of it? And Ubisoft seem very committed to being like 100 hours out of this AC game, you crazy person. Like, you want a long game? We made AC Odyssey's 200 hours long now. Just play it forever.
Is that true?
Let's see here.
Because I know it came out with a new DLC thing, so I'm actually not sure if you're joking or not.
Assassin's Creed Odyssey, main story is 40 hours, main story plus extra is 71 hours, completionist is 113 hours. So that's... And that doesn't include any of the DLC, I'd imagine. Origins, I wonder... Because the Origins got a lot of DLC.
I played like 50 hours of Origins.
Yeah. And didn't touch any of the DLC, right?
Nope.
Yeah, so... yeah, the standalone review for Division 2 will be much more coherent, I hope.
40 minutes long.
40 minutes long, yeah. But yeah, it's good, solid, competent. Cool. I'm a little burnt out on it because I played a lot of it in a short period of time, but I'll definitely stick with it. I'm curious to see what that Tier 5 world and Last Stronghold is like. I'm very curious to see the raid. Yeah. There's very little to complain about with it, I would say.
That's good. I don't know if I've been converted. I feel like I'm always just waiting for Ubisoft to do something fantastic.
Yeah.
They're just the kings of like satisfying people just enough.
Yeah.
But hey, if you like the Division,
Kings of Mediocrity is too like harsh sounding, but like I mean that in a complimentary way. They make comfort food video games.
Yes.
And you want a lot of comfort food when you need comfort food. And
that's true.
You want to gorge yourself, and they allow you to do that.
They're the king of 7 out of 10s.
Yeah, or 4 stars in this case. And those 4 stars last very long. God, their game. This is probably one of the shorter ones though in a while. Like 20-hour campaign.
Christ, yeah. Their lifestyle game is half the size of Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah.
What are they doing?
I don't know. Get a grip, Ubisoft. Make Division 3 600 hours long to beat the main campaign.
Yeah, Jesus. And Assassin's Creed 24, like 2 hours long.
Yeah. Oh, that would be all right. I'd probably play that.
Me too. Sekiro. Shadows die twice.
And you'll die a lot more than twice. No one's ever made that joke before.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I don't know why they did that little addition to the title. I really like their, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, simple 2-syllable title thing going on. I don't know why they chucked in
it makes sense for, like, the lore,
But
he dies and then he can resurrect.
Yeah, but you can actually come back 3 times later on.
That's true. Sekiro's shadows die 3 times. It has less of a ring to it.
I do like the part in the game where you talk to Kubo, whatever the hell his name is, Lord Kuro, and he's like, "You probably resurrected 2 or 3 times to get here." It's like, yeah. I think that was a definite bit of comedy.
I think I got to that bit as well, and he's like, "You've definitely resurrected more times than you can even count." And it's like, you bet.
So Sekiro.
Yeah.
Sekiro is the reason this video is coming out the second week of April. Because when we did the February? When was the last one we did? When
February,
February video, we were like pretty timely. We were on time for once.
And we've had the Division 2 and DMC 5 we chatted about ages ago at this point.
Yes. The Sekiro came out the 22nd 22nd?
Yeah, 22nd. So 2 weeks? 2 weeks ago?
And it took me a long time to beat it. I literally beat it last night. I did, for anyone who knows the game, I did the Resurrection playthrough. Killed all the bosses, got all the prayer seeds, all the gourd seeds, and did as much as I can in one playthrough. There's actually 2 bosses I can't get to unless I do a different ending. Which hopefully I will see when I do New Game Plus, because I'm actually really interested in doing New Game Plus, because it should be so much quicker. Because the amount of content in the game that's optional is huge.
Yeah.
And people are doing speedruns now in 30 to 40 minutes, because you can just run past so many enemies.
Huh. Yeah, I guess so. If you just...
The main ending is really... The main ending is like 15 hours backwards from where I finished the game. You can skip so many areas depending on which ending you do.
Wow.
Which is interesting. People who go into these games blind, oof, like, they're brave people. I don't have the guts to do that. I had a wiki, like, guiding me along the way. It's like, you can miss half the game. And I guess there's nothing wrong with going back and playing it again. I don't know. It's just always the way I've done the Souls games. I like to have... there's usually a wiki with, like, a quite rudimentary and spoiler-free... they call it a progress route guide. It's just like, if you want to see everything, get everything, here's where you go. And it shows you off your titles of the bosses, if you think that's a minor spoiler, but apart from that, that's how I like to play them.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, the From games of the last 10 years have always had a communal aspect to them, and this maybe has a little less of that, but yeah, I don't think there's any harm in going to a wiki and being like, what is this thing that I have in my inventory with this ridiculous name, or where do I go? We should probably back up a tiny bit.
Yeah, we probably should. One thing I do want to start out before we get into the specifics. I think every From game has quite a fun zeitgeist with the community, but everyone's figuring out how it works. And I think Sekiro has had Sekiro. What? Which one is it? It's Sekiro.
That's the question.
I said it right the first time, I think. I'm doubting myself.
You did. Sekiro.
But I think this had maybe the most interesting zeitgeist in a long time. Because I don't want to say the Souls games have got easier. I just think a lot of people are in the franchise by now. You know, by the time Dark Souls, kind of Bloodborne. Bloodborne was different, but Dark Souls 3 for sure, people were really familiar with the game. Doesn't mean they're easy games, but when you're used to the combat system, there is a learning curve which is gone, and it's just like you against the game. And Sekiro was very interesting, because From kind of ingeniously and kind of evilly, is evilly a word? I'm not sure. But they made a combat system which is challenging to master for newcomers, but also they made a combat system which is also very challenging for Dark Souls players. And it's absolutely 100% by design. Because there are a lot of
breaking of habits.
Yes. If you have muscle memory for Dark Souls, you are going to have a rough few 10 hours or so. If anyone, I don't know if there's anyone who likes Dark Souls that hasn't played Sekiro yet, probably not. But just like a couple of examples, I don't think I'm going to go through every like layer of the combat, because I would be here all day. There is a lot to pick up. But some obvious differences is, in Sekiro you have no stamina, whereas in the Souls games, I would say stamina is the core of the combat.
Oh yeah.
You are always keeping an eye on your little green bar, and whether you can block or dodge depends on how much stamina you have, and it's all about balancing that in combat and making sure you have enough to manage your space. And in Sekiro, you don't have any stamina. There is like a pseudo stamina with the posture system, but you can wail on enemies as much as you want. You can block whenever you want, and getting that into my brain was really difficult. Another major difference is jumping is used in combat, which is never used in combat in Dark Souls, like ever. You maybe jump on one boss in like a fun scripted sequence in Dark Souls 3, but apart from that, you never jump. So I think I was like 15 hours into the game until I finally drilled into my skull that I should be using jumping for evasion and for stunning enemies. It took me so long to get over that habit of not jumping in combat. And the last one is a really evil one, where in Dark Souls, if you are holding down block, your stamina comes back slower. So you're on a constant mental battle of letting go of block and only holding block when you have to. And in Sekiro, you hold down block to gain back your posture. It's the direct opposite. So they have purposely made this system to combat the skill of Dark Souls players and the memory they have for the game, which is pretty evil, but also kind of ingenious. And I think maybe it's a direct response to Dark Souls 3 and people kind of blasting through that game and not having a huge amount of trouble with it. I'm not sure. Or they just wanted everyone who picks up the game to be on the same playing field. Although I kind of think Dark Souls people might have been at a disadvantage because you have this muscle memory, and it's almost like when you were talking about having trouble with the Spider-Man combat because you were your brain was doing the Arkham buttons. That's how it felt for the first like 10 to 15 hours of Sekiro for me.
Yeah, I definitely didn't have that. I am no expert at From Software games. Let's just say that. I have definitely not beaten Sekiro. And I will eventually, but not legitimately. Let's just say that. Let's just say that. I am a fraud. I am a hack. I am a false gamer with Sekiro because it's on PC, and what I'm saying is 2 words: cheat engine.
Well, you know, there's been a pretty big debate on the internet.
There has been
easy mode.
Yeah,
and all I'm saying is get a PC.
Yep, it's called personal computers.
It's called cheat engine.
Yeah. So yeah, we should roll back a little bit, I feel like, because Sekiro is a fascinating designed game, I think. Like it is. So going in, I thought, like, I didn't pay any attention to it. They did their E3 trailer, and I was like, that looks cool. From Software, weird. This looks different. And they said, like, it's a linear action game, and it's not an RPG. And I was like, okay, that's cool. And then I didn't pay any attention to it afterwards. So I sort of went into this. The reason I wanted to play it most was to see what it was.
Yeah.
And then going into it, in my mind, for whatever reason, I had sort of imagined it as, like, a little bit more like a platinum game in terms of, like, it's sort of like, 12-hour linear. They said linear action, and I associate, like...
The linear word really threw me off.
Yeah, is it From Software making, like, a sort of platinum game style action game?
Yeah, like a Ninja Gaiden type thing or something?
Yeah, I thought, oh, that would be kind of cool. Because also it was being published by Activision, right? Which you sort of associate with more casual, friendly games. And it turns out Sekiro is none of those things. Yeah. Well, I mean, it is linear in a sense, and it is certainly an action game. But it sure shit ain't easy. And it ain't short.
It's not short, no.
And so it's such a weird, fascinating game because it is simultaneously the most upfront and clear in terms of teaching you things and giving you information and story compared to the Souls games. This has cutscenes and like a plot you can follow.
A little practice dummy dude in the main hub.
It has a training dummy that you can work with. There's like the tutorials are very clear and like they're not like this janky ass message on the ground that you just read and it's like R1 to block and you're like, okay, thanks game.
Yeah.
This has like proper tutorials. The item descriptions are very clear for the most part about what they do. Everything is. That stuff is really clearly presented in a way that the Souls games never ever were.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand of it is the combat, which is so fucking deep and complicated and, well, maybe not complicated, I don't know, but it is demanding in a way that the Souls games aren't, I think.
It's because I just don't think there's as much flexibility in this game with what you are allowed to learn.
Yeah, it's a really interesting.
To learn everything.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating like dichotomy of like, it's the most accessible in a lot of ways, but then it's also the fucking hardest thing they've made, and it's like you need to learn how to play the video game or you're not gonna beat it. And it's not like the Souls games where you can farm, and over level yourself. And build into all sorts of different types of combat, fast, slow, fat rolling, all these things. Like, Sekiro's combat is Sekiro's combat, and you either are going to get very good at it or you're not going to get very far in the game.
Yeah, I think a persistent theme of Sekiro is probably mastery.
Definitely, yeah.
You have to master the game. And again, I'm referring back to my 10 to 15 hours where I was really struggling. I have beaten pretty much every Souls game except for Dark Souls 2, even Demon's Souls. And I wouldn't say I'm that good at them. Because you don't really have to be that good at the Souls games to stumble through them. Because again, they give you the flexibility of, you know, if you want to be a hardcore dude, you can learn how to parry. You can play with no armor and 2 swords in your hand and just dodge roll. And use rings where if you get hit once, you die, but you do triple damage. And you see people doing it without getting hit. And I'm the guy, you know, with the shield and the big health bar. And I just kind of... I just
scrape everything.
I just kind of scrape my way through. And in Sekiro...
And you hit the boss in the ass over and over again, and then it dies.
Yeah, or you call in a second player to help you out.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, I've beaten them all, and I would never really consider myself a great player. And they never demanded that of you. If you were just, I don't know, persistent enough, stubborn enough, you would eventually get through the bosses. And Sekiro does not give you the tools to do that. There is no cheating your way through these bosses. You will have to master every single attack, and you have to know exactly what you're doing. And you can't just, like, ignore a set of moves. Like I just mentioned, I never really learned how to parry in Dark Souls. I know how to do it.
I never.
But to me, you know, every time I tried it, I timed it wrong and just got hit in the face. And I'm like, I'm just going to dodge. Why would I try and parry this?
You're invincible. Like, just dodge.
And I think in Sekiro, my approach was like a little bit similar. I ignored the jumping stun for like 10 hours. There's another move that I completely ignored for ages. And I was severely punished for not listening to the tutorials.
Even just the core of deflecting is like something that I was ignoring for quite a while. Because I am an extraordinarily terrible Souls player. Again, never really played a lot of them. Bloodborne's the one I played most. Just give me the thing, and I'm just gonna, like, my timing is terrible. I just spam attack. Like, I'm just terrible at them. And so it took me a very long time to get through my thick skull that it's like, oh, you need to deflect, like, everything.
It's like the primary action in the game, I'd say, more than attacking.
It's a very different approach to Souls where it's like you go in, you hit a couple times, and then you back off, and you dodge, and then you run back in, and you hit a couple times. If you play Sekiro like that, you're fucked.
Yes.
And Sekiro is like, you need to be engaged with the enemy the entire time, never letting up, deflect everything, attack them, deflect the
use your tools, your prosthetic arms, use everything.
Yeah. And it is definitely it definitely feels like a reaction to, like you said, Dark Souls 3 being sort of just breezed through.
By the
like everyone mastered the Souls games, right? Like, they were figured out, and I think they moved on from them with Dark Souls 3 was the last one, and I think it was good of them to be like, all right, people have figured these games out. Let's try something else.
They said they're not making any more, and I assume that's probably a response to that.
Yeah, they feel completed. Like, everyone, like the people that like those games, they've figured them out.
Yeah.
I mean, what's his name just did that no-hit through the entire series, like never getting hit once. That's madness.
You to learn a new experience and have to figure it out and go through that barrier of difficulty and overcoming something. And, they can't keep doing that if they get to Dark Souls 5 and everyone's played 2 of them already. So it makes complete sense to keep, reinventing their own formula. And I think a big surprise of mine was I didn't think this was a Souls game. And maybe you could debate the logistics of if it counts as a Souls game, but I'd say it really is just another Souls game, but with the most variation in the combat so far. Bloodborne was just a bit faster with the weapon variation, and this has a lot of differences, but this is still like a From Souls game. This goes with Dark Souls and Bloodborne, if you know what I mean.
It's in the same spirit, for sure.
Yeah. That's debatable if it's a Souls game. It's debatable.
Yeah, for sure. There are a lot of really neat echoes of the Souls games throughout. There are fog doors, and even just the way, like, money and loot drops on enemies is very, and the way it flies to you, and the menu sounds, the main menu, start menu is literally identical.
Yeah.
I think you'd have to probably set up rules to properly define what makes a Souls game, and I would bet that there are a lot of those rules that would not apply to Sekiro. Like,
yeah,
the ways with which you can diverge and build into all these different ways. The very RPG
stuff.
Nature. Yeah, but I think. Yeah, I don't know if I would call Sekiro a Souls game, but it is Souls adjacent, or it is very much definitely, this is the same people making, the first non-Souls game in 10 years, and it's like, okay, this is clearly like the same people, the spirit is the same.
I mean, who knows, in like 10 years time, when they made like 2 or 3 more games, this might be like the start of phase 2, and it might have a different name, if that makes sense. Yeah,
but I think philosophically there are a lot of very similar things between the two.
It's Miyazaki, same creative director, it's still his vision.
Totally, yeah. And that sense of like, this is extremely difficult, you need to learn it and then triumph over it. Like that sort of loop is very much there. There are basically bonfire equivalents, there's basically an Estus flask equivalent. There are definitely, but I think some of the ways with which it diverges are where it gets most interesting, like the stealth and the mobility. Which we haven't even touched on, those are the elements I like the most, I think.
I really like the mobility. I really like it. But I will say that I wasn't really that keen on the stealth overall. Yeah. When I first started the game, I was like, this is really cool. Because it's new, and the animations in this game are outstanding. So when you stab someone in the back and the blood spraying everywhere, it just looks amazing. And it is fun at first to have this secondary option in combat. You can almost puzzle your way through areas. You're like, okay, this guy's his back turned, so I can easily take down this guy. And I think I really enjoyed it at the beginning, mostly because I was kind of struggling with the game, and I was like, oh, thank God I could just stab this big fat guy in the back and I don't have to battle him. But by like hour 30, I don't know, the magic did start to fade for me when I was just, crawling up behind an enemy and pressing R1 and he was dead. There was something that just, again, it was only near the end game where I was like not even really interested in the stealth. I was just like, I'm just going to run past these enemies because if I'm going to stealth them, I'm not really fighting them. I don't know, it was just something that I have never really clicked with in games. I don't really like stealth. I'm not a sneaky boy. And I didn't get any satisfaction for like you can also get a sugar, which makes you basically invisible. So stealth is like, you don't have to think about it. You just pop a sugar.
It's pretty easy.
Go behind someone, and then you press R1, and they're dead. And I don't know. Combat variation is always good. It's nice to have different ways to approach combat when they create a pretty strict way of fighting enemies, especially in boss fights. You really have to know what you're doing. When you're outside of boss fights, just fighting the ads, having more than one way to go about it, probably was the correct decision. They are the smart game designers, and I'm the idiot boy. They've been doing this for a long time, and they probably were like, all fights are starting to feel the same when you're just clanging swords against everyone. So let's make some variation for pacing reasons. So I think the game would probably be worse if you didn't have the ability to stealth. And also it's optional. So I should shut the fuck up. Because I don't have to do it if I don't want to. But also, why am I going to make the game harder for myself when I could just stab the guy in the back? I'm a lazy guy. I don't know. Yeah. I'm mixed on it. I don't think it ruins the game. I'm just not a stealth guy. It's not really my thing.
Yeah, that's fair. I would call myself very impatient, circumstantially very impatient. Like with bosses, I'm very impatient, but with in between stuff where I can be stealthy, like I don't mind hiding in the bush for 30 seconds to wait for the right moment. So that the stealth that you sort of touched on it, which is the sort of gets into the thing that I think is maybe the most problematic for me with the game, and it sort of touches on like my favorite and least favorite part of it, which is I really, really like all the combat between the mandatory bosses. I really like the mobility because you have a grappling hook and you can very quickly zip up to trees and rooftops and get out of a fight. I really like that you can be stealthy. I really like that you can break stealth, enter combat, zip away, and re-enter stealth. And so I really enjoyed that. I've really enjoyed all of the combat between mandatory bosses because you can approach it however you feel like it, really.
Yeah, you have a lot of items and tools because of your broken arm, your one arm, whatever you call it. So you can a lot of variation and experimentation with the, I guess I call it I don't know what to call it. Outside of boss fight.
Ads and optional bosses, are sort of all in the non-closed off arena areas, right? And that stuff is where I've enjoyed it the most, and I also think it's really neat how there's sort of that element in the Souls games of like cheesing things, where it's like I'm gonna summon someone, or I'm gonna stand right behind the boss and swing with a held R2 attack or whatever, or use it. What was it in Dark Souls or Demon Souls where you could just like use an arrow and shoot like 700 arrows at a boss and you'd never get touched and things like that, where it's like I'm cheesing the boss and that's fun because fuck you. Like this game is a bastard. I'm gonna screw it. And Sekiro, in terms of like boss cheesing, that's pretty much non-existent in my experience, at least. I'm sure there's a few cases where this attack is really good, but you can't summon in this game at all. There's no online component. So the bosses in Sekiro are like, you need to learn the combat. You need to execute on the combat like nothing else. And then all of the... And in the bosses, you cannot use stealth and you cannot use mobility. They are just in an open arena, with walls on all four sides, and that's about it. Like, pretty standard From Software boss room design. But then... There's in my experience, from what I've seen, right?
Yeah.
I know that there are probably a few variations on that, but for the most part, so then there's that where it's like, okay, to progress past these mandatory bosses, you have to be a master of the combat. But then all of the combat where you're not fighting the bosses, except for maybe the mini bosses or side bosses or whatever you want to call them, all of the just regular moment-to-moment gameplay is, I don't want to say easy, but it's like, it's easy. It's like
sometimes
I can, but it's cheesable is what I mean. Really, is
sometimes
I like the ways with which you can cheese the content, the fights in between boss fights. Like that you
the
can,
majority of the game with stealth, using your tools, your shuriken, you can be a little bit cheesy. Yeah,
I like that you can kill some guys, run away, come back, and re-enter stealth and zip away, and there's some. I feel like I'm sort of cheating the game a little bit when I'm doing that stuff in a way that I really enjoy.
But then, if you do that, then you don't learn the vital skills you need for the boss fights.
Exactly, and I think that's the biggest problem I have with it right now is that most of the combat outside of, between the bosses isn't really asking a whole lot of me.
Yeah.
And then you get to the boss and it's like, are you a master samurai warrior? No? Okay, then get out. And it's like, I've learned nothing. And that's probably the biggest issue I have with it, and is just that, honestly, I wish that the bosses just incorporated that mobility and stealth a little more. Because, I really like the side bosses because you can do a sneak attack on them. You can enter stealth and fuck with them, and you can eventually convert enemies to come help you fight them, and I like that stuff a lot. And then just the bosses are just so fucking demanding.
They are.
And I'm just not good enough, which is when I open Cheat Engine and make myself unkillable.
But you could get good enough.
I know, but I don't want to.
That's fair.
That's where the should it have an easy mode discussion has been coming up a lot, I feel like.
Yeah,
just
maybe
how
that's why,
demanding some of those fights are.
Maybe that's why the discussion has been so prevalent, because you could argue the tutorialization, is that a word? Probably not. You could argue the way it teaches you in the game is not the best at all times. It teaches you the combat, but like you said, the game really gives you the ability to play it kind of how you want up until some mini-bosses and definitely the major bosses, the shinobis as they're called, where you have to know exactly what you're doing, react accordingly, and there is some limited flexibility in the bosses, but you really need to know all the combos. If you want to do it effectively, I'm sure you can blag your way through all the bosses not knowing what you're doing. But if you want to do it like cleanly and without sweating bullets, you need to know exactly what you're doing. And maybe the game doesn't do the best job of doing that. Because I will tell you, the spear, he's called the Seven Spears.
7 Spears of Ashina or whatever his name is.
That guy, oh boy. Oh boy. He destroyed me for 3 hours.
Wow.
And then I gave up and I left and I went on to go against Genichiro.
Yeah.
And that was when, this is like when I was talking earlier about the 10 to 15 hours where I wasn't really getting to grips of it. That was when the game finally was drilling into my head that I need to learn this jump stun. I don't know if I just wasn't paying attention, but when he was doing his sweeping attacks, I finally like looked up a guy. I was like, oh shit, I remember them saying something about this. But I forgot about it. And then once I'd learned that jump stun, I went back to the spear boy and I beat him in like 1 minute. I destroyed him. Because through his slow attacks, you could just jump stun him over and over again. So the game really punishes you for missing like one ability and one system. And this might be where the discussion is coming from, because I do think if you are unaware of a single ability in this game, you will have a really hard time. Because I'm not going to point out the boss fight that you had a hard time, which you wouldn't have had a hard time if you knew about what you should be doing.
Yeah, I mean, it was late.
It's okay. I'm just saying.
Turns out, like, it's the first boss in the game. It's trying to teach you to hit the fucking deflect button. Like,
yes, it's basically a deflect tutorial.
Look, sometimes you're just an idiot, and I was just being an idiot.
But I don't think you're alone, because the conversation of difficulty in this game has been a bit extreme compared to other Dark Souls. And I think that might be where it's coming from, because when I was against the spear boss, I was almost in that club. I was like, this is fucking absurd. Like, this is too much. I'm so furious. And then you figure out, oh, wait, I haven't been doing this one thing. And you try the one thing and like, oh. Right. Yeah, this game actually isn't that difficult. You just have to know everything about it, combat-wise.
It maybe fails to make clear up front, like, the core philosophy of it, which is...
Yeah.
You need to, like, this game is about mastery.
Because not everyone's going to go on the wiki like I did.
No, certainly not. And, like, the core principle of the combat is, like, mastery and perfection, which is, of course, very in keeping with, samurai and shinobi and all that. And it's like, you need to master the combat. And I think, yeah, they just sort of maybe fail a little bit to make that core idea really clear.
Especially when it's different from Dark Souls. We don't really have to do that.
I would almost say that, like, the Souls game, they sort of almost have easy mode, like, built into it, in that you can over-level yourself, and then you can also summon other players.
And you can do magic if you want.
Yeah.
I've never done it, but you can do ranged spell magic, which apparently is very easy mode for people who don't want to, get in there with a sword.
Right. And so I think, yeah, like, the flexibility of Souls sort of allows for more flexible difficulty, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Whereas Sekiro is not flexible like that. And
I hope it doesn't seem like I'm complaining, because I'm not. But it's just an argument that's been going around the internet. And I just think it stems back to people not really, like you said, understanding the basic major core philosophies of how this game works. Especially when it's so different from everything else they've made.
Yeah.
So I think this game is rough to start, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that rough start could be like 15 or more hours before you
learn it into your skull how you play the game.
Yeah, which the core philosophy really often feels like get good or get out. Like
yeah, but that's always been kind of a meme in Dark Souls, but in Sekiro it's real.
It's very real. It feels like yeah.
But I should say
it's.
Yeah, it feels like it's been like a negative note saying the tutorialization isn't the best. I think it's probably one of the most satisfying combat systems ever made in an action game. It's super deep, super rewarding, very reactionary. It rewards you for being patient and taking your time. I do have some minor issues and complaints, which I will bring up. But I think it is the best combat system they've ever done, and maybe one of the best combat systems in action games. It's really deep, really rewarding, and there is, like you said, outside of the major shinobi boss fights, there's a lot of flexibility to do weird and wacky stuff. I'm not going to spoil all the crazy abilities you get, but the game really allows you to do wacky things. It doesn't take itself too seriously. You can really mess around with some of the systems in the game. And there's been some funny highlights. We've already mentioned there's an ability which allows you to take over enemies. There's other things which I won't mention, but taking over enemies is a hilarious ability, which, again, you have to like think about it. There was a boss the other day, right near the end, where there's a general and the spear guy. You know, the 7 spears guy is him and a general. And the general only has 1 bar of health. So I used a stealth sugar, got up behind him, and then I took him over. And he was on my side, and together we fought the second coming of the spear boy. And it was brilliant.
That stuff, I love that stuff about this game. And I just got that ability to take over an enemy, and I was like, oh, this is a really interesting twist. And a new option for sort of cheesing things in a way that I really like. I had a question about these skills. How useful would you say that the skill trees, like the skills, are? Like, because to me right now, I mean, I'm still fairly early, so I haven't unlocked a ton of them. A lot of them just feel like more combos that I'm never going to use. Like, there's obviously a few important deflects.
They're all pretty damn useful.
Okay.
I'm pretty guilty of not effectively experimenting with, I think it's called combat arms. It's the hold R1 and press L1, or hold L1, press R1. And it's like a big special move. Right. I kind of just stuck with the same one for the whole of my playthrough. I will change it up in New Game Plus, but there's a bunch of those to experiment with, which I didn't because, I don't know, there's so many things to learn in the combat. I was trying to take it one step at a time. The ninjutsu skills, which is the what do you call it, the slot where you take over the enemy. You keep getting a bunch of those, and they're all really wild and interesting. Okay, and they're all super effective and great. And then you just get more prosthetics as you go along, more arms.
That stuff is really, those things are really good.
Yeah.
They're really neat. They unfortunately do the Bloodborne thing where it's like it uses a consumable, which I don't know. I just sort of wish that they would just make it so like you have 15 and then when you rest you just those replenish. I don't really know why they make it a consumable. It's not really it's not really a problem after the first like few hours of the game. Like you just dump some money into them and you'll get so many of them. Like
I always ended up just buying a bunch of them before boss because I knew I was just about to die.
Yeah, exactly. And but the variety of them is there's quite a lot of them. I mean, I've got 8 or so of them. I bet there's a lot more than that. And
I think I think you're pretty close.
Okay, but then there's an extensive upgrade tree.
Yeah,
which changes the functionality. Yeah. When that upgrade tree showed up, I was like, oh my god, this game is a lot more complicated than I thought it would be.
Yeah, and there's like a bunch of skills which tie into using your sword in tandem with the prosthetics, so you can chuck a shuriken and then follow up with a slash and then like pop something else out, and it really adds some nice flow to the combat. The combat is really deep. Really is
That's
deep.
Good, because I just run in and slash and deflect, and that's all I do.
I mean, but that's kind of, maybe that's our version of saying you don't need to learn the parry in Dark Souls. In Sekiro, you don't really need to learn every single combo, but it allows for some really fun play if you do.
Well, it's good to hear that it continues to get deeper and weirder as well. Because
I mean, we've literally talked about the combat for 30 minutes and nothing else.
That's true.
That should probably say how much is going on with the combat system in this game.
Yeah, I suppose you're right, huh?
There's the amount of variables in it and the amount of different ways you can approach it. Outside of the bosses, which usually have 1 or 2 responses to every combo they have. But apart from when you're outside of it, there's a lot going on and a lot you can do. And I look forward to experimenting with some of the arms I didn't use. I didn't touch the spear much. There is... I won't spoil anything, actually, but there's a couple I didn't really mess around with in my first playthrough. I'm actually really excited for New Game Plus, because I think starting the game with all of the tools, all of the ninjutsu skills straight out the gate is going to be really interesting, and it's going to make things play out a bit differently, I think.
I'd be curious how some of those other, like, earlier boss fights would be with some different things,
Before we move on, I will just say, I just have a few little quips about the combat. I don't really, and this is a personal thing, there's arguments for and against it, I don't really like combat systems which don't allow you to cancel out of queued actions.
Yeah.
This is in, I think it's the same in Dark Souls 2. I think it was the same in
I would
Neo.
say it's even the same in Bloodborne. Having played some just last night, you can.
Oh no, you can dash out of an attack in Bloodborne and Dark Souls.
Yeah. Oh, out of an attack. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
But there's no action cancelling in Sekiro, and there's an argument for no action cancelling because you need to be more careful with your attacks and you need to be more deliberate and plan. And it's basically, it stops people from spamming attacks. But there's just for me, I don't like feeling like I'm not in control of my character. I find it very frustrating when I start an attack and I'm against a speedy enemy and they start to do an attack and I just can't dodge out of it, even though I'm pushing the button. And I know it's my fault.
Yeah.
All I have to do is be more reactive than aggressive. I just wait for them to attack, then attack first. I understand. I know it's my fault. But I just don't like not being in full control of my character. I think it's more of a preference thing than me saying that I think it's a bad system. I think the system makes sense. It forces you to really be like more reactive, more focused, and more careful. There's something like unimmersive about hitting the B button to dash, and he doesn't do it, if that makes sense.
Right.
Or I push up to heal, but because I've pressed heal while haven't finished my roll or my whatever, it doesn't work. And in my brain, I've queued it up and it doesn't. I don't know. There's just some things about it which make me feel like I'm not in full control, and I don't like the system in any games. I'm playing Dark Souls 2 now, and it's preference. I think I don't like it.
Yeah.
It's just fair. Yeah. It's just for me. I don't know. And apart from that, the only thing I would say is I do feel like some of the windows for attack deflections are sometimes a little too small. And this might be asking for a get good comment because, it's a computer. It's not randomized. There is a window. And if you push it right, you will get a deflection. But sometimes it's so small that I feel like the human brain can't realize when... My brain actually can't realize when I've done it different from another timing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that first optional boss right before Genichiro, the guy he's just a samurai, and basically his only attack is, I'm going to unsheath my katana and hit you twice so fast and resheath the sword. And that guy, the speed with which he hits blew my fucking mind. Like,
really? Okay.
Well, he was you know which one I'm talking about, right? Where he just does the and then resheathes his sword. Like, that was the first.
Yes. Sorry, I'm with you.
Yeah.
He's fast.
And I was like, this is so fucked up. Like,
really
it was the first time I've played a game where I'm like, my brain and body are not fast enough for this. And I got through him by poisoning him because that does a lot of damage to him. It literally felt like I need to go and rail cocaine and to be fast enough to Adderall and coffee and it's just I don't know how it was astonishing to me. I've never seen an enemy attack so quickly in a game. I was just like, holy fuck, this is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of enemies like that, it sounds like.
I only say this because I've been watching a lot of streams. It's a really fun game. I think all From games are fun to watch people struggle through.
They're fantastic spectator
And
games.
I feel like a catchphrase of the whole community has been, I pressed L1! I swear I pressed L1! I've been watching a lot of, I think he's called Fextra Life, Cass, the guy who runs the wiki. And that is basically his catchphrase. He's like, I pressed L1. And it's the same with me. I feel so confident that I nailed the timing down. And I understand it's a computer. I didn't get it down. But there must be the window. If your brain can't register that you're doing it incorrectly, then in my opinion, it's maybe 5-10 frames too strict. When the human brain can't register failure, it also results in frustration. Even though I'm just trying to not get yelled at by people who are telling me to get good. I know I'm doing it incorrectly by a short amount of time. I know.
Yeah.
But when you can't tell...
But it feels like your own physical body is limited. And you're like...
I think there's just something very frustrating about feeling like I pushed the button at the right time, I reacted correctly, and I pushed it, I had the intent, and I failed. It just feels very cheap. Even though I know I pushed it wrong. Okay, don't yell at me. I'm just saying, I just think the window should just be a little bit bigger. You're still reacting. You're still pressing the right button at the right time. Mostly.
Yeah.
You know? Just a little bit of a window doesn't, you know. Some people aren't as, you know, some people are older than other people.
Yeah, and like if you're playing this in the evening when your brain's starting to slow down a little bit, like I was when I encountered him, I was literally hitting the button and his sword was like resheathing by the time I hit the deflect button. Because the whole animation is like 15 frames, it feels like. Like it's so fast. I know it's longer than that, but like when I was playing that, when I encountered him with a slow evening brain, I was like, this is impossible. I am not capable of this physically. Yeah.
Like, I don't really agree with the easy mode stuff, but I think maybe if the window was just like just a little bit bigger, then a lot of people would be complaining a lot less.
A lot less, yeah.
That's just a little bit. That's what I'm saying.
You just gotta get good, son.
I beat the game. I beat all the bosses. I did it. All right, I'm just saying. Every now and then,
I'm impressed. By the way,
thank you.
Upon encountering that slashy fella early on, I was like, I will never be this. That was when I realized anyone that beats this game they're good at video games. I was like, and I will never be good at video games.
I have been playing them for a while, so I'm okay. I'm okay at video games.
Yeah,
but let's get into like the pace of the game.
Literally anything other than the combat, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, From games are pretty simple in structure. You have a nice big area with a bunch of ads, usually with a different theme, not thematically, like just different environments, and then there's a boss, and then you move on to the next one. And, feudal Japan, is that right? Did I pronounce that right? I will say that I do think it's a bit more of a limited setting for what From can do. There are some more wild areas later on in the game, but having played, 50 hours of Nioh, like going to Hirata Estate and Ashina Castle was very samey for stuff that I'd seen. And when you play Dark Souls, sometimes their stuff is similar, poison swamps and big castles, but they still do strange and interesting stuff because fantasy is so flexible and so broad. And just feudal Japan, after playing Nioh, for me, the environments just weren't as inspiring. The game still
blend together a little bit.
A little bit. A lot of bamboo forests and big dynasty temples. Or dynasty, sorry. But the game still looks good. From artists are amazing. Great vistas. It looks great and runs great on PC.
Good. Yeah.
But
I can't imagine. I was going to say, sorry to interrupt, but I cannot imagine this combat at 30 frames per second where you have...
Is it actually 30 on console?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Which sounds pretty fucked up, but... Jesus.
I
want to play this game at like 600 frames per second.
Yeah.
I agree. The environments are a little... I was glad I popped into a couple of later game streams, and it was nice to see that, like, it still gets a bit weird. A
little bit, yeah. There's
a little bit, yeah, within the realm of
some spiritual areas, which are pretty nice, but it's a lot of just feudal Japan. You kind of...
I would say the same for the enemies as well. Like, there's a lot of... They're pretty, aside from the fucking giant roosters, there are a few times, some of the enemies do get a little weirder, and I'm sure they get weirder later on, but the enemies are a little limited. Yeah, they're a little limited in terms of strangeness. And,
a little bit less variety in the design of this game compared to
definitely
Bloodborne and the Souls game.
And a little less interconnectivity.
A little bit,
So there certainly is some of that, for sure. But good. It's a good exploration game because of that mobility. It really lets them tuck things away.
Oh yeah.
And
there's almost some kind of puzzle areas where you're like, I don't know how the hell to get up here. There's no grapple point.
Yeah.
Some good stuff with that.
There have been a few where I found like I don't know how to get down there without dying. And I like that it's one of those games where in a lot of cases you can just sort of like if you take a different perspective at an environment, you're like, oh, I missed a pathway. Which I know the Souls games are like that as well, but it feels... the verticality is tremendous, and there are nice sections where there are just like, this is just a little exploration section. There's no enemies here. Just wander around and look for stuff. And there's some neat secrets. There was, I didn't realize this, but that first headless you find... there's another exit out of that headless area that takes you like deep into the Senpu Temple, which is like, that's neat.
It's cool. I found that.
Like the exploration's really good. I like that a lot, and I'm glad they still have some let's call it, the trolley spirit of From Software is still present for sure at times in this game. It's not maybe as present as the Souls games, but you know, the bit where the guys fly out from the sky and tackle you. Like, that was pretty good. There's some stuff like that. Those stupid little tiny bastards that wear their little wooden hat and throw daggers at you on the cliffside.
I like how From was like, you're going to judge these guys and you're going to think they're a pushover, and then they just destroy
And then they put 3 of them on a rooftop and you're like, this game is impossible.
There's some good stuff.
I just laugh whenever I encounter those things where it's like, you bastards, fuck you.
There's a really good, this is a minor spoiler for an enemy coming up, so maybe skip forward 30 seconds if you don't want any enemy spoilers, but there's a fun enemy in one of the later game areas, which they look pathetic. They're like a little slug and they die in one hit, but if you don't notice them, they fill you up with this meter and you get hit with this affliction called enfeeble, and Sekiro turns into an old man, and he's like... He's walking on his sword like it's a cane, and you can't move. Shit. And then they just come and absolutely destroy you.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
It's brilliant.
That's so
Minus spoilers. Spoilers over. Minus spoilers over. But yeah, I would almost recommend letting them do that if you're near a shrine. Just
I'm definitely...
enfeebled. It's hilarious.
I'm
like, what's happened to him? Oh,
that's God. So good. That's so good. Oh, man. But yeah, there's like... You know, exploration's good. There's still that spirit of trolley attitude, which I love. I love it so much. And there's still... I love how, like, so much stuff is optional. Like you said, the bosses. So many optional boss fights.
So many optional areas.
So many optional areas, yeah.
Hirata Estate is completely optional.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
The late game place that you might have seen called Fountainhead Palace, optional. Don't have to do it.
Huh.
Loads of stuff. I mean, that's why the speedruns are so quick. Like, people doing it in 45 minutes.
That's crazy. And there's good, you know, some good moments, let's say. There's a couple of neat set pieces. One early one where you're exploring on the cliffs. That one's really good.
Very cool.
You know, there's still that satisfying feeling of, fuck you, game, I beat you, you son of a bitch. Haha.
Yeah.
And I especially like that feeling when you cheese it. It's just like, I'm smarter than you, game. Like so far my favorite moment with the game was fighting Juzo the drunkard.
Yes.
And I was just like, nah, I don't want to fight this normally. So I would, like, you know, aggro guys, stealth kill, get rid of all the ads.
Yes, yeah.
Stealth backstab Juzo once.
And then sprint.
Yeah, run over and get the guy and be like, all right, dude. Yeah, and it's like, I love that. I love that you can cheese the fight like that, and I wish there was more of that for the main bosses, but the main bosses, I think, are pretty infrequent, which is good.
Yeah, but I think there has to be a big challenge in the game. It's a fun
game.
Yeah,
there have to be gates, for sure, for sure.
They are pretty...
as an extremely mediocre gamer, I just wish I could cheese everything, because it's very satisfying. It's a very fun feeling to get, like, feeling like you're one-upping the game, where you're just like, I know they thought about it.
But I also think
know,
there's an argument to say that it's even more satisfying when you master the game. And having both of those abilities or possibilities side by side makes for, you know, a really diverse experience overall.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah,
I'm just going to transition into talking about some of the boss fights, not specifics.
Okay. I was just going to also say there's a story.
Oh, yes.
Shrug.
Yeah.
There is an actual story in this game that you can follow.
Yeah, it's really simple, actually. It's just about trying to sever an immortality curse, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting to see them take a more traditional take to storytelling.
Yeah, and there's deep lore if you want it, and if not, there's just kind of a pretty easy to follow journey with our characters.
As opposed to Souls, where there's extensively deep lore and no story to follow up front.
Yes.
And the one last thing, I like that the setting is sort of in the midst of the collapse, whereas like the Souls games and Bloodborne are like, okay, here's this city, post-collapse, everything. Like, I can easily picture this game, a game set in this same area that is like, you know, 5 years afterwards, where everything is just demons and corrupted, you know, shit.
There's some cool moments in the game where two factions are fighting. And you don't even have to get involved if you don't want. You can, obviously, but there's like two factions fighting, and you can just run past them. It's a more alive game.
Yeah, and I just like, it's neat to see, you know, in Senpu Temple, there's lots of references to like these guys are starting to fuck around with the dead, and like that's no bueno. And you know that like 5 years from now, this whole thing has collapsed and it's all gone to shit.
Yeah.
It's just sort of neat to see them roll back their sort of timing for the setting a little bit. Yeah. Go on. What were you going to say?
All right.
How are the bosses?
Okay.
Rank every boss from easiest to hardest. Go.
Oof. Some bosses are really fucking hard. Last boss is hard. I do. So I have to go on a bit of a journey here, a little bit of a talk.
Okay.
So I would say my first 10 hours were rough. Again, didn't adapt to the combat, didn't understand what the game wanted from me. I was in the crew of people who were struggling. A bit embarrassed to admit it. I was having a rough time. But then I had the combat click with me. And I had maybe the most satisfying session of Sekiro ever. I played about 8 hours in one day. I think it was a weekend. And it was very reminiscent of my time with Dark Souls 3, which is my favorite of the series. Everything was just flowing. I was excited to get to the new area, to see what boss was next. And I just... When the From games flow for me, there's just nothing like them. And there was a moment where I thought Sekiro was going to be my favorite of the series, and maybe even my top game of the year. I was like, this is going to be better than my experience with Dark Souls 3, which, whew, I loved Dark Souls. And flow is quite important to me. I think when a game flows really well, it stays in your memory as something special. God of War comes to mind, the way that just every second of that game, I just never wanted to stop playing. And when a From game can do that, which it shouldn't be able to do that because it's full of frustrating challenges, it's a really unique experience, which is why Dark Souls 3 was like my number 2 of 2016. But for me, I'm not sure if I ruined my Sekiro playthrough for a section by imposing this challenge of getting every prayer bead, which is killing every mini-boss in the game. And I was having the best time of my life up until the Guardian boss fight. He didn't ruin it, by the way. He's a fantastic boss fight. Maybe the best designed boss fight in the entire game. God, he is so good. Whoever designed him is a genius. I won't spoil the twist in that boss fight, but it's fucking amazing when it happens. But anyway, after the Guardian boss fight, they start to really recycle mini-bosses in a way which I found really extreme, kind of frustrating, a little bit boring, and it really killed the momentum and tempo for me. And it happens in a really short period of time. I think the Guardian Ape is a good timestamp of when it really started to happen. Like after the Guardian boss fight, I came across another Snake Eyes guy, who was the guy outside the gun fort. I was like, oh, it's his twin brother, okay. And then there was another Headless, and then another Drunkard, and I was like, okay, what's going on here? Is there going to be any new bosses? And it just went on and on and on. And every corner I went around, there was a repeat of a mini-boss. And I was like, oh, fucking hell. I don't think it's bad to have repeat bosses because, again, a theme of this game is about mastering stuff. So, you know, when you fight a Drunkard for the second time, you're much better at the game. And you get to destroy him and you feel good. But there's a lot of rehash bosses. And I feel bad criticizing this because these are all optional. You don't even have to attack them. But a counter-argument is they have prayer beads inside them, which are incredibly valuable items and huge incentives to pursue them. And the Headless guys drop even better items. They drop a replacement for the sugars, which are unlimited if you have spirit emblems. You can just use 3 spirit emblems and you get the attack, defense, or what's the invisibility one? Whatever, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So the rewards for these mini-bosses are really big. It's not like in Dark Souls where they're just on the side and you get bonus souls. You get character-changing rewards for killing them. And I've always just done a full boss run of these games because, I don't know, it just feels satisfying to beat every boss and know that you've really conquered every challenge these games can throw at you. It feels like a nice completionist tick box when the credits roll. It's just kind of, I don't know, it's a tradition I've got into with these games. And I kind of feel like I should not have done that because it ruined the back third of the game for me to a point where I was kind of not enjoying it. There are so many rehash mini-bosses. There are a few that are optional, again, depending on the ending you choose. And I also, on this list, I kind of included Is this a spoiler? I won't say it. There were 18 repeated bosses in this game.
Wow.
18. And I'm going to count them out for you. There were 4 headless. 2 of the Snake Eyes guys. You know the speedy samurai with the sheath? He sheaths out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, him.
2 of him. 3 Shichimen warrior. Don't know how to pronounce that. You can fight the guardian ape twice. There were 4 drunken guys, with the fat guys with the swords. Jesus. Another chained ogre. You know the ninja guy down the well?
Yeah.
3 of him.
Jeez.
Another bull. You can fight a major boss, which I won't say his name, twice. The spear guy comes back, and another one of the bosses you can fight 3 times, with a total of 18 rehashes. And this only starts happening 2/3 into the game. So you get kind of like a wave of them coming at you. And it just really ruined the momentum for me in a way which I found really disappointing. Because when I got to the Guardian boss, Guardian Ape, I was like, this is one of the best games I've played in the series. It might even be the best game. And then I kind of hit this roadblock where I was like, oh, he's fucking headless number 4. I beat him 3 times. This has gone past the point where I feel good about conquering him. Also, 2 of them are underwater. Whoever put 2 headless underwater? Oh, the headless underwater boss fights. Oh, Jesus Christ, they sucked. God, those fights suck. But it was like after
anything underwater in a video game should be banned.
Oh, but like the 3rd Shichimen warrior, it's like I beat him twice already. I've proven I can do him. It just felt a little bit lazy for From. Especially when they were kind of placed in weird places that didn't really like contextually make sense. Some of them were fun. Like I think fighting the bull for the 2nd time really worked because the bull gave me a lot of trouble and then I destroyed him the 2nd time. I think fighting a drunkard for the 2nd time is good because, you know, you learn how to deflect better. But 4 of him? Did we need 4 of him?
Yeah, jeez.
If they had been more spread out, I don't know, it just felt like a 25-hour experience inflated to a 40-hour experience for me. And again, it's really hard because it's a self-imposed challenge. I didn't have to go for all the prayer beads. I could have just left them. But there's good rewards in them, and I want to beat all the bosses. It's content. When you pay for the game, you want to do all the content. I don't know, I'm struggling to know if it's a valid criticism when it's optional content. It's like moaning that there's too many side quests. But when you tie like stuff that really progresses your character,
important things,
So I don't know. People might say that it's a stupid thing to complain about because you don't have to do them. But I wanted to do New Game Plus, and I thought it'd be nice to go into New Game Plus with the biggest health bar available. That made logical sense to me. Why would I not want to have the most health I can have?
Of course,
but to do that, you've got to fight 18 bosses you've already fought. And that's just, I don't know. It was unfortunate for me because the flow of the game was top tier. I could have played that game and beaten it like in 2 days after I got to the Guardian 8 boss fight, but it took me like another week because I'd play like 3 hours, I'd get pissed off because I was kind of starting to rush the boss fights because I didn't want to fight Shichimen Warrior for the 3rd time. Didn't want to. So I was getting sloppy and it's just a person. I shouldn't have done it. I ruined the game for myself, that's what I'm saying. Shouldn't have done it. But I do think the repetition of the bosses was a bit extreme. I think you can give the players the satisfaction of being like, hey, I've grown as a player and I'm better now in a smaller scale. There's New Game Plus. Like I can fight these bosses again like on my own terms. If I want to fight them again, I'll play New Game Plus. You don't have to put every single boss in the game twice or 4 times. I just found it to be a little bit obnoxious. And sometimes it came off as a little bit lazy. And I've never used the L word for From ever. So it feels bad to say that. But yes, that's just like a
padding out a little bit. Yeah,
it's a self-inflicted complaint. I didn't have to go for 100%. Didn't have to kill them all. But I did. And I found it really annoying. And it ruined the momentum for me. But apart from that thing, all the boss fights in this game are really good. I think this has the best boss fights in anything From has ever done. I love the main bosses in this game. The Shinobis are fantastic. But I kind of got soured on the mini bosses a bit. Because, you know, I fought 4 the drunkards and 4 the headless. And I'm just kind of sick of them.
I'd heard that there were 4 headless. I thought that made sense because it was like, there's like 4, you know, they're sort of hidden throughout the game. But I didn't realize that there were so many other that were repeated.
A lot.
That's too bad.
It's a lot.
That's too bad.
But again, I don't know. Maybe that's not valid criticism, but I did it, and it kind of soured the back third of the game for me.
I mean, an all-boss run is not exactly an uncommon way to play through a From Software game. So
yeah, especially when they have so much good stuff in their bellies, and I want to rip it out.
Right.
I want to.
You need them upgrades.
I do. But yeah, it's yeah. I don't know. Don't know if that's a valid complaint, but I'm going to say it anyway because it ruined. Not ruined the game. That's a harsh word. I still loved the game. Great experience, but it was on course to be the best in the series for me because it was just flowing so well and the momentum was fantastic, and that kind of soured it. Also, whoever made the Foggy Forest, fuck you.
Oh, good. There's a Foggy Forest in this game too, huh? Great.
God, when you get to that, don't fight anyone, because eventually you kill someone who gets rid of the fog. I should have done that. God, that area was annoying.
That sounds a lot like the forest in Bloodborne.
Yes.
Or the forest in every Souls game.
Gotta have some homages, don't you?
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah.
How good did it feel, though, to beat the final boss last night?
Oh, fantastic. This game has some of the best highs from beating bosses that I've ever felt in a video game. Because they require utter mastery, utter focus, and a lot of patience and practice. And they just feel fantastic to beat.
Yeah.
You come out there with like shaky hands and just a great, satisfying feeling.
You need to go walk around the room for a few minutes after that.
Yes. The game is... It's a really, really great game. And I think my favorite part about the game is just seeing how flexible From can make this format feel without really changing that much of its core. It is very different, but to me, it still really feels like their stuff. And just with like a few just a few little tweaks here and there, the game just feels so different combat-wise. And obviously, I know there's a lot of difference, but I'm talking about just changing the fact that you have to block to get back posture instead of not blocking. Like, it changes everything with these small tweaks. And I do like that they're on a course where they're experimenting. And I hope that we get more variation for them. I hope the next game they announce isn't Sekiro 2. Or maybe even Bloodborne 2. I hate to say it, but I'm enjoying them trying different and new things with their own format that they made. It's cool.
Yeah.
And
do you want to give it a rating?
Oh, ooh, I didn't think about this. Ooh, are we doing half stars? If we're not doing half stars.
Sure, I don't know.
If we're doing half stars, it's a 4.5 stars for me.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenal action game. It's beautiful, it's difficult to master and extremely satisfying. And, you know, you can complain that the game has a rough learning curve and maybe doesn't paint a picture of what it wants from you as the player very clearly. Hence the internet's reaction to the game. But the zeitgeist for the game has been really, really enjoyable. I know you shouldn't critique a game on what the community is doing outside of it, but whatever. I've really enjoyed watching speedruns, watching people play it, like just seeing how the world has reacted to this game. Because it feels like no one has reacted to a game's difficulty since Dark Souls. You know, the meme of, oh, it's the Dark Souls of blah blah, has always been like, this game is really difficult. And no one's ever said this is the Bloodborne of this, or the Dark Souls 3 of this. And I feel like people are going to be like, this is the Sekiro of X and Y from now on, because this game is fucking savagely difficult.
It really is.
I think it's brilliant. I have, my only main complaint is the repetitious mini-bosses, but it's optional content. If you're listening to this, I would recommend not really doing all that stuff. I don't know. It's definitely player dependent. Some people might not be bothered by it. Some people might really enjoy killing the drunkard guy 4 times in a row.
I'll open cheat engine and kill them all.
But for me, I'm a big momentum and flow guy. I like playing games for an 8-hour stretch in a day and not feeling bored. That to me is like my good gaming memories. That's what I remember the most across the year. And I had one of those in Sekiro, and I was like, hell yeah, I can't wait to do that again. And I didn't. It was like 3 or 4 hours maximum before I was getting annoyed. So
yeah,
my only major complaint: a self-imposed completionist list soured my experience, and you don't have to do that. It's up to you. You can play the game how you want.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I mean, as someone that's just, I very much know and am fine with the fact that these games are not, like, I ain't the target audience. I am not the one that these games are made for, even though I do find them really just, they're very fascinating, just as pieces of design. Like, From Software, like, I mean, they invented basically a new type of game in a way, and Dark Souls is such a monumental game, really. It really has, over the last 10 years, as time goes on, it really just keeps solidifying itself as one of the most important games made in a very long time in terms of influence and reaction and all that. And they're just such a... And no one has figured out how to make a From Software game, right? Like, there are so many impersonations of Souls games out there, and they're all shit. I'm being too mean, but like, you know what I mean? Like From Software are the only ones that know how to make these games, and it's really, Sekiro is equally fascinating. Like I remember getting into Bloodborne, but I remember sort of starting to see the spark when I played a decent amount of, like, 6 hours of Dark Souls 2. I'm just being like, man, like, the online nature of this game is so amazing. Like, the fact that there are these player-placed messages that are just like, jump off this cliff, there's treasure down there. And then you, like, jump off the cliff and you fucking die. And it's like, oh, great. And like that is, as a piece of design, like, it's just so, it's so smart and weird. And this has a lot of similarly smart and weird but different design elements from the Souls games. I sort of miss, like, the online sort of trolly nature, but it makes sense, of course. But yeah, From Software, just, those guys think about game design in a way that nobody else does, and they execute on it in ways that is really, I find it very hard to look away from. Like, I just want to sort of poke at it and be like, man, this is so weird and cool. And I wouldn't necessarily say that I like Sekiro. Like, I like Sekiro, but I don't, you know, like, it's just...
You respect it.
I have enormous respect for all the From games, but I just, you know, I don't like boss fights, you know, like that. Like, I fundamentally don't like boss fights. So, of course, I don't like From Software games. But I definitely, like, will see... Bloodborne is my favorite of them. Sekiro is number 2 because I've played twice as much Sekiro as I ever did any of the Souls games, and will finish it all the way through, even though I might have to cheat more and more as things go on. But I just want to see as much of it. You know, I want to see these weird abilities you talked about that beyond the possession or resurrection, whatever, you know, of enemies. And it's a really, really, really cool game that is not for me, and that's fine. I'm not going to hold that against it. It's also been just neat to see the sort of, I don't know if I'd go as far as say divisive nature of it, but like there have been really neat reactions to it.
I would agree. I think it has been divisive.
Maybe divisive. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. It's just it's just fascinating to watch everyone react to it and be like, this game was incredible, and like, oh, this game is way too hard, and we need the easy mode for every game, and or you know, like the combat, this, and just it's good that it didn't have a reaction like Dark Souls 3. Like Dark Souls 3, I feel like just sort of came out and went away pretty quickly, and everyone was like, that was great. It was great. It was another one of those, and it was great. Whereas this game came out and like it's been a couple weeks now, and people are still discussing it, and I expect them to continue discussing it for quite a few more weeks. Honestly, I don't know that.
I don't think it's going to get an easy mode.
Oh no, of course not.
I feel like the game's difficulty is a response to people getting used to the series. I mean, Miyazaki wants the games to be brutally, horribly, well, not horribly, but brutally difficult.
Yeah, and I don't think that this has the longevity of the Souls games, just because there's so much
limited way to kind of run it.
Yeah, but it's been really cool to see a lot of discussion about it again, but that discussion is like very different from the Souls discussions, and they're no one makes games like From Software, and Sekiro is no exception, and it reinforces more than ever, I think, the like fascination in what they do next. Like, I'm just like, I don't even know. Like, and I can't wait to see it because they're so weird and creative and smart, and make fucked up games in ways that are, their games are fucked up in like really cool, ingenious ways, and not like, oh, this is so janky, even though, you know, there are some elements of rough edges for sure in some of their games. That
I do hope that they don't fully commit to the new direction, and they kind of go back and forth between other design philosophies they've had in the past, because there are parts of Dark Souls I do miss. I like the RPG stuff. I'm a big fan of it. Also, Dark Souls is goofier. I feel like it's less. It's just a bit more silly. The ragdoll bodies. And something I noticed really early on in Sekiro is you can't push enemies off of cliffs like you can in Dark Souls. Like, enemies fall off of cliffs, and big enemies will hit smaller enemies if they just get in the way. And there's like a lot of comical, laugh-out-loud moments in Dark Souls. It just kind of looked a bit ridiculous. And there's not really any of that stuff in Sekiro, so I hope this isn't like fully committing to this new direction. I want the old From philosophies to kind of keep creeping into their new products in different ways.
I mean, that's the thing with them. Like, I don't have any expectations for what their next game will be. Like, I don't know. Like,
bring back
Ragdoll. Another Sekiro game? Is it? Yeah, bring back the Ragdoll corpses. I mean, these guys have made like mech games. They made didn't they make like 3D dot game heroes or something? Like, From Software is a weird. They made Daracine. It was a PSVR game last year. Like, they make all sorts of weird ass shit, and I don't know what their next thing will be, and that's great.
That is great. I agree.
Yeah,
it's nice to not have any idea what's coming.
Yeah,
because like after Dark Souls 3, they had such a defined format. Even though they went a bit weird with Bloodborne, we kind of knew what we were always going to be getting. I was always just gonna, I don't know, expect a spin-off of Dark Souls or Bloodborne 2, but now I have no idea, and that's always fun with a company to not know what they're gonna do.
Yeah, Bloodborne was very much like, you look at it and you're like, this is a Souls game, like 100%. Whereas this, you're like, this is similar, but it's a big enough departure that you're like, now I don't know what they're going to do next.
Yeah, a lot of people have used that meme where it's like, what is it this thing? It's like, yes, but also no.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very much that.
Yeah, is it a Souls game? Yes and no.
And no.
Yeah. Good job, From Software. You keep trucking along, confusing everyone and making everyone break their controllers and debate online.
Who would do that? Break a controller.
Putting a crack in an Xbox One controller is no small feat. You should be proud.
I don't know what you're talking about. Me?
No.
I am the coolest cucumber. So anyway, end of the March discussion. What a month, dude.
End of March.
It was a really good month.
It
There's been some good indie stuff on the side. I've been playing Satisfactory Early Access. There was Baba Is You, cool puzzle game.
Playing Astroneer.
Astroneer's been good. I've even dabbled in the Division 2, which is, I might play more, but it seems pretty comfy and good from what I played.
And April has Days Gone.
Is that it? Oh shit. Is that it? Is that what we got? Days Gone? Maybe we should wait to
Dreams.
Oh yeah, Dreams Early Access.
I don't know what April's Roundup will contain. Maybe
we should just wait for May, because May only has Rage 2, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't really know when the next one will be. We'll see. SteamWorld Quest is April as well, but yeah, Rage 2 is literally the only thing we have scheduled for May, so we might not do one until later in May, maybe.
Yeah, but anyway. Thank you for listening, guys. Thank you to everyone who supports us on Patreon. YouTube at the moment does not like us. Really doesn't like us. And I don't really like them.
No.
To be honest. So any support on Patreon is appreciated, because relying on YouTube AdSense with our format, not really gonna happen. So appreciate anyone who goes out their way and does that extra bit. Appreciate you guys. And everyone else.
This is sorry to interrupt. This is in a podcast form as well, and that is now on Spotify. I got it working, I think.
Well done.
I don't use Spotify, so it's there now.
Good
just
job,
put it in the comments if you want me. If there are more fucking podcast services out there, I'll put them there. I don't know. I don't use
someone like universalize the podcast platforms all over the place. But yeah, thank you for the support, guys. Thank you for listening, and we will see you in 1 month or 2 months, depending on what comes out. Have a good one.